This is the regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council, calling it to order here. It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, October 14, 2020. And I would like to first of all welcome our new city manager, Miss Pam Ann Till is there in the office. I think she's waving at us. Hello. Welcome to your first week and your first city council meeting. We're all really excited to have you. And so may we please have a roll call?
Yes, Mayor, we will do a roll call. Councilmember Hubbard is absent. Councilmember Mosca?
Here.
Councilmember Kranz?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Hinsey?
Here.
And Mayor Blakespear?
Here.
So the record will show all members are present with the exception of Councilmember Hubbard.
Okay, thank you. And now I would like to call on my colleague, Councilmember Kranz, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we will go to our special presentations and proclamations. We do have 3 of them today. The first one is the presentation of the Senior Citizen of the Year Award. And I'm going to give a little bit of information about this. I saw a picture of both of them holding the awards. And
just sign in and then
it was fantastic. I'm excited to say some words about them, and then I'm hoping that they're on the line and can give a few comments. So the City of Encinitas Senior Citizen Commission, in partnership with the Encinitas Rotary Club, hosts a program called the Senior Citizen of the Year Award. The Encinitas Rotary has been a proud supporter of this program since its inception in 2014. This annual award program is designed to identify and celebrate people who have selflessly contributed to City of Encinitas as a senior citizen role model, or as someone who advocates on behalf of senior citizens. 14 nominations for 12 individuals were received in 2020 for service done in 2019. The Senior Citizen Ad Hoc Committee and a member of the Rotary Club rated each nominee. When the results were tallied, there was a tie between the top 2 nominees. Because of this, the Senior Commission decided that it was only fair to award both seniors the Senior of the Year Award this year. So I am very pleased to announce that Lynn Calkins and Greg Butler have been selected for the Senior Citizen of the Year Award as co-award recipients. And I'll start off with Lynn. So Lynn's commitment to the community is impressive. She served as coordinator of the Interfaith Shelter for the past 15 years. As a registered nurse, she donated her time to give flu vaccinations to her congregation. She started a caregiver support group and runs a care team at her church. She makes sure that members who are homebound are visited by other church members and looked after. They offer support, personal visits, and meals to homebound seniors. Lynn coordinated educational tutoring for refugee children. She organized numerous Death Cafe events, provides resource information on end-of-life choices and death with dignity movement via her nonprofit organization. Lynn organizes an annual collection of clothing for the poor in Fiji and has participated in several missions to third world countries, offering extensive medical knowledge and care to those in need. Finally, she organizes blood drives at the Sandag Tennis Club. Lynn volunteers her time, kindness, and amazing wealth of knowledge throughout the year. So with that, I would like to invite Lynn to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Here is my plaque, if you can read it. And I want to thank you for this tribute. I'm very honored to share this award with Greg Butler. And I feel very fortunate to live in a city that has so many ways in which I can jump in with an organization and help others in our community. The list is too long to mention, but thank you for being that kind of a city.
Well, thank you, Lynn, and thank you for contributing to our city. We'll give you each a round, we'll all give you a round of applause in the screen. So thank you for your dedication. We're so grateful.
Thank you.
Okay, so now Greg. So Greg is also very active as a volunteer with his church. He has been providing transportation to senior citizens as a volunteer driver for over 12 years. In addition to driving, he volunteers to do home repairs and run errands for seniors. He is known as a handyman, carpenter, and electrician, and puts his skills to good use. He repaired stairs and installed a temporary ramp so that wheelchair-bound parishioners could attend Mass. For over 30 years, Greg has spent countless hours coordinating quarterly blood bank drives and serves as a liaison between the blood bank and the church. He has been the chairperson of the Tootsie Roll Drive, which provides funds for the mentally disabled, and continues annually to have an active role as treasurer and coach. He has been chairperson of numerous events held by St. John's Catholic Church, including the Fiesta Christmas tree sale and other activities that benefit the community. Greg is an unsung hero whose goal in life is to be a model citizen and to lead by example. So I would like to invite Greg to say a few words.
I'm not sure whether I'm on camera or not. There may be a problem with it, but anyway, I'd just like to say how appreciative I am of the award. I doubt that I'm any more worthy of it than many other senior citizens in the wonderful city of Encinitas. But I do appreciate the award, and thank you very much. And I just encourage others to do the same thing. Get out and do something for someone else. It's the best thing you can do in your life. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Greg. We're giving you, I don't know if you can see us, but we're all giving you a clap in our screens.
But I don't think you can see me.
So it is inspiring to know that such people are part of our community. Both individuals have displayed dedication, overarching commitment, and a positive impact to those that they have served. We sincerely appreciate their leadership, positive actions, and service above self in support of the senior community. In 2021, the Encinitas Senior Citizen Commission and Encinitas Rotary Club will once again be soliciting nominations for Senior of the Year for good work accomplished in 2020. We look forward to your participation as a nominee or as a nominator and encourage all of you to spread the word. So thank you very much on that item. We will now move to the next item, which is the next special presentation is a proclamation for the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment ratification. So this, I will read the proclamation since we don't have anyone to present it to on Zoom here. So, whereas, and this is just like the other proclamations we read in City Hall, which begin with a lot of whereases. So whereas the bold, courageous, and powerful women who fought for the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution on August 18, 1920, deserve special celebration by the city of Encinitas, especially on the 100th anniversary of its ratification in 2020. And whereas California was the 18th state to ratify the 19th Amendment on November 1, 1919. And whereas California holds a special place in women's suffrage history, as thousands of California women advocated for the right to vote on the streets, in the newspapers, in the state capitol, and throughout the state. And whereas California women gained the right to vote with the passage of Amendment 8 to the state constitution in 1911, nearly a decade before women voted nationally. And whereas the 19th Amendment did not guarantee suffrage for all women, including Native Americans who did not gain the right to vote until 1924. For Asian Pacific Islander Americans, it was 1952. African Americans and Latin Americans suffered voter suppression until passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and 1975. Whereas many women in the United States continue to suffer from biases and discrimination in the form of wages, workload, healthcare, domestic violence, and appearance double standards. And whereas many women and men of the United States have united to assure that these biases and discrimination are eliminated for all citizens equally. And whereas the fact that today women are active in local, state, and national government and are running for office in unprecedented numbers reminds us that we all follow in the footsteps of these resolute American suffragists. And whereas the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution has played an important role in advancing the rights of all women, now therefore be it resolved that I, Catherine Blakespeare, the Mayor of the City of Encinitas, and the City Council of the City of Encinitas, hereby recommend that residents and civic institutions celebrate the 100th anniversary of the passage and ratification of the 19th Amendment, providing for women's suffrage to the Constitution of the United States, and recognize the commemoration as an opportunity to continue to work for equal rights for all citizens. And I wanted to recognize Ingi, a citizen who submitted a request for this proclamation. And I don't know if she's on the phone tonight, but if she was, I wanted to give her a chance to say a few words. Does anybody know? City Clerk, do you know if she's on?
I don't see her.
Okay. She is one of our environmental commissioners. So with that, we will move on to the next item in our special presentation or proclamation, and that is a presentation by Sheriff Captain Taft regarding mid-year crime statistics. So I will turn it over to you, Captain Taft.
Thank you. Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, first I want to say to the Mayor and Council, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and present this. Since the report did come out recently, I went to the city manager, and I just thought it would be good for me to explain things primarily to the residents on what's happening in the city as far as crime, and what were some of the reasons why in this report that we saw, spikes. I'd like to start off by saying, and how I'm going to end it is that I've been your chief of police for over a couple years now, and I want to say that this is a very safe city. It's still a safe city. It's one of the safest cities in the county, and it's just a great community to live in. So the Sandag report, and this is what I'm here to talk about, is the mid-year Sandag report. And some of the residents may not know what Sandag is or how they get their numbers. So I just want to briefly talk about what Sandag is. And it stands for San Diego Association of Governments. What they do for the County of San Diego is they compile and report regional crime stats for San Diego County. So every month we report crimes to Sandag, and Sandag compiles them for all the cities and all the agencies in the County of San Diego. What they do for us is they produce 2 reports each calendar year. They produce the mid-year, which covers January to June, and then they produce an annual report, which covers January to December. Today, I'm talking about the mid-year 2020, January to June. So all of my comments will be focused on that, since that's the latest one that's come out in the last month. So there's a lot of different types of crimes, but Sandag only talks about certain crimes, and that's important to know, that these are the only crimes that are considered in their report. So the first is violent crimes. They statistically compare violent crimes throughout the county to each city, and they cover homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. So those are the 4 crimes that they report on for violent crimes. The other part of it is property crimes. They look at only 3 different types of property crimes, which is burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. So keep that in mind. And again, a lot of this, I know council knows, but this is directed toward the residents also, that This report covers 7 different crimes, 2 categories, violent and property crimes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each one. I'm going to talk about violent crimes first and go over the numbers for that so that I can go in and explain more what the report actually says, and then I'll cover property crime. So it'll be broken up in pretty much 2 parts. So this sheet here is actually what Sandag produces. This covers all the 18 cities in the county. And as you can see, I've highlighted Encinitas there. Now this is just violent crimes. Remember I said I'm just going to talk about violent crimes first. So this is just violent crimes. And just ignore the 2016. We're going to focus on 2019 and 2020. I've highlighted Encinitas in the red. And these are the 3 numbers that I want to talk about. So here, and I'm going to just try to keep it simple because stats can be very complicated, but I really want to present a very simplified interpretation of what our numbers are. So the city of Encinitas in 2019, from January to June, and remember I mentioned that this is just from January to June, had 38 violent crimes. Again, violent crimes cover homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. And that's down here to tell you which crime. So that's in 2019. In the same period in 2020, there were 60 violent crimes. And again, same 6-month period, January to June. That is a 58% change. That is an accurate number. When you do the math, the difference between the 2 divided by 38 gives you 58%. So just on the surface, that doesn't look good, but but Sandag doesn't really interpret that. They just put the numbers out and this is what they are, but they don't really deep dive into it like I'm supposed to. And that's what I do. That's what my analysts do. And we look at what the numbers really mean and how they got 60, how they got 38. So looking at these 2 numbers, I want you to focus on total violent crimes. Again, I'm just going over the violent crimes right now. I will talk about property crimes later. So these are the numbers Sandag put out, 38 and 60. The way they got to 38 in 2019 was we had 3 rapes, 5 robberies, and 30 aggravated assaults. And I'll explain the definition of aggravated assault because some people may not know that. For 2020, here's our numbers: 15 for robbery and 41 for aggravated assault, and that's 60. So that's how they got the numbers. This is what we reported to them in 2020. And again, just as a reminder, this is only from January to June, so it's a 6-month period. So as you can see, the biggest changes in this is the aggravated assaults. It went from 30 to 41, and then robberies went from 15 to 5. The rapes did go from 3 to 4, but this number is not accurate. We actually only had 1 rape, and of course, 1's way too many, but we only had 1. 2 of the numbers actually happened in 2019, but they were reported for 2020, and 1 of them actually occurred in Vista, but because the victim came to Scripps Encinitas, they included that in our stats. So this number really is, we had 1 official rape in the 6-month period from January to June, but they report 4. So just a little mistake there, but I'm going to start off talking about aggravated assaults, and then I'll move to robberies, and I'll explain why these numbers are the way they are. So let's go to aggravated assaults. So as you can see, 30 and then 41. Now, aggravated assault by definition is an unlawful attack upon a person for the purpose of inflicting severe or aggravated injury. That's what it is. They don't necessarily have to have an injury, but if the intent is to hurt you, we consider it an aggravated assault. So when you look at the numbers, 30 represents 30 victims. That's how many people were the victims of an aggravated assault. When you look at this number, that's 41 victims. So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at victims versus anything else. Here's what's unique about these numbers. So in 2019, and let's focus on that. In 2019, there were 30 cases with 30 victims. That's what this number is. 30 cases, 30 victims. However, what happened in 2020 from January to June, you actually only had 34 cases. So you didn't have this all of a sudden huge uprising in aggravated assault because your only difference is 4 cases. What you had was 41 victims. So you had 5 cases in which there were multiple victims. And that's why you see this increase here of 11 victims, because here you had 30 cases and 30 victims. Here you had 34 cases, but you had multiple victims in some of the cases. And I want to remind council, and I'm sure they remember, take for instance, the guy that was at the bar downtown who was intoxicated. He was kicked out of the bar because he was so intoxicated. And the bar did exactly what we wanted them to do. They didn't overserve him. They told him they couldn't serve him anymore. He gets in his U-Haul van and drives down the sidewalk. That's where you have multiple victims involved. So that's added to this. No one could do anything about it. That's just a decision he made. It was a bad decision that he made. So now you got one case with multiple victims. Some of the other cases you got that were multiple victims that really no one can do anything about. You had a road rage where one car gets cut off. The victim says he saw a gun. The guy said the suspect said he didn't have a gun, but we have to treat it like there was a gun. And so now you've got multiple victims. You had 3 people in the car. That's another case with multiple victims. Another case you had was on the beach. You had a guy who was being teased, or at least according to him, was being teased by several teenagers. He kept telling them to stop, So he pulls out his pocket knife and he threatens them. Now you've got another case with multiple victims. No one was injured, but those all get added in. So what I really want you to pay attention to is that you didn't really have much change here. You had 30 cases in 2019, you had 34 in 2020. That's only a difference of 4 cases in 6 months. So we're talking about a case every month and a half, 2 months. So it's not, it looks bad, but it really isn't. It's just that you had 5 cases where you had multiple victims of behavior that we just couldn't predict would happen. In any case, most of these were, they knew each other. Most of these assaults, we knew each other. Many of them weren't necessarily an injury, but again, it doesn't have to be an injury to have to be labeled as an aggravated assault. So that's what I wanted to clarify. The truth of the matter is you only had 4 more cases in aggravated assaults in 2020 than you had in 2019. So that's aggravated assault. So let's move on to robberies. So as you can see, in 2019, according to Sandag and what we reported to them, there were 5 robberies. And then in 2020, there were 15 robberies. So I'm going to explain those numbers also, because that's a difference of 10. So for the 15 robberies that we have, let me get to my notes real quick. So for the 15 robberies we had, half of them are what we call Estes robberies. So immediately when a person thinks of a robbery, they think of some violent confrontation. And really the majority of these, or I should say 8 of them in the 6 months, were shoplifting, beer runs, that sort of stuff. We have to still call it a robbery because the individual was approached and may had a victim may have grabbed his arm or their arm and said, "Hey, you can't leave," and they pushed their way past. So that's what we had as part of this 15 here. We had 8 of them, which happened at like 7-Eleven, Chevron, liquor stores, a gas station. We had a lot of that, and most of these occurred right after the shutdown. So between the shutdown, March, April, May is when we started, you had most of these sort of beer runs, grab and goes, where they just wouldn't stop. Okay. In the 15 that we did have, and the other 47% those would be considered more violent robberies, I should say, such as like a bank robbery. We had one bank robbery in the 6 months here in the city, and the suspect showed a gun in his waist. He was arrested. We did find him. We did arrest him. So that would be considered more of a violent robbery. Another robbery that you had that's part of this 47%, a guy downtown wanted a woman's mask. She didn't want to give it to him, so she took it. We have to label that as a robbery also, because it was force or fear involved, even though she didn't get hurt. But that's the other 47%. So we've got really two types of robberies here. We got one where it's kind of a grab and go, or a beer run kind of, and then we got the other ones which are a little more serious stuff. But we didn't have any repeat offenders. So these 15 people you see here, they're all different. None of them are connected. We saw no consistency with any of them. And in the 15, 80% of them were arrested. So we arrested just about every single person that was involved in a robbery in the city and took them to jail. So that's kind of, I wanted to explain that 15 and what it really was, which is half of it is just going into a 7-Eleven, grabbing a six-pack and then running out. So that's violent crimes, and I hope that kind of explains a little more of what you saw, the increase. So it's not that violent crime is just out of control. It's just that there are some, you had a few more victims because you had 2 or 3 incidents where you had multiple victims. And so with those just 2 or 3 incidents over a 6-month period, you are going to get an increase in victims. And that's just the luck of it. But that's by no one's fault, except the people who were the suspects. They just made some bad decisions at that time. But it's not a huge crime wave and aggravated assault. So I don't want the residents to think that it's not safe. It is, because you didn't have much of a difference. So let's go to property crimes. And again, it's the same thing. So this is from Sandag, and I specifically focus on this because it also shows a 17% increase. So the city of Encinitas had 283 property crimes, and property crimes are burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. Larceny covers your shoplifters, basically. So we had 283 in 2019. You had in 2020, you had 332. The difference does make up 17%. So it looks like, you have a 17% increase in crime. Now, again, Sandag doesn't explain this. They give you hard numbers and they don't deep dive. That's what I'm supposed to do. Okay, so let me deep dive. So again, now we're talking just property crimes. Just property crimes. And these are the numbers from Sandag. 2019, 283, 2020, 332. How did they get the 283? 46 burglaries, 202 thefts, 35 auto thefts or stolen vehicles. In 2020, you get 67 burglaries, 240 thefts, and 25 auto thefts. And that's how they get to the 332. Now, you see the two that I'm going to talk about are of course the thefts and the burglary. I'll focus on the thefts first, and then I will transition over to the burglary difference and why you're seeing this difference in numbers here. I don't need to talk about auto thefts because there's less of them, and so I won't talk about those. But let's talk about thefts first. So again, thefts are considered, in the category of theft, you're going to get thefts from vehicles, theft of motor vehicle parts, bicycles, purse snatching, shoplifting. Those are some of the things that are included in theft. So just so the residents know what we're talking about. So again, 240, 202, I think that's a change of 38 crimes. What I wanted to show you was that, now remember, in the shutdown, many of the stores in Encinitas stayed open. And this has been one of the arguments of, well, what happened in the other cities where they saw a decrease? Well, these stores don't have places like Walmart, Home Depot, Target. So when you can't compare the city of Encinitas, who has a huge business area with a lot of the big box stores who were open during the shutdown. Solana Beach shut down, Del Mar shut down. So you can't compare the city of Encinitas to Solana Beach or Del Mar. And I say that because Del Mar, a lot of their crimes affected by the fairgrounds, but the fairgrounds were shut down the whole time. So they didn't see hardly any crime. And then Solana Beach doesn't have the huge business district that the city of Encinitas does. So that's just a side note. You can't compare the three cities because it's a huge difference. So we did see an increase in the big box stores, Walmart, Target, Home Depot during the initial part of the shutdown. We saw an increase. We did some things over there and there was a decrease. So we recognized that there was a lot more theft going on in those stores because they were open. And so we started paying more attention to it and there was a decrease in it. But that's not the most important part of these numbers. So there are three reasons why these numbers are higher. The first is we had a series. We had one type of series going on here, and it involved catalytic converters. In 2019, this was very popular, stealing catalytic converters. However, most of the thefts were up north, or I should say further north county, like San Marcos, Escondido. A lot of them were going on up there. In 2019, we only had 2 cases down here. Then in 2020, we started getting hit with these cases. And we started seeing more catalytic converter theft series. In fact, we had 12 cases on our own. We have made a lot of progress on this, and I'll leave it at that. And eventually we're gonna catch the individuals that are doing it, but we have made a lot of progress on identifying who has done this. We haven't made an arrest in these cases, but we have some very, very good leads.
Captain, what is a catalytic converter? Is that an auto part? Is that part of the exhaust?
Yeah, that's part of the exhaust, and they're very, people cut them off and then they sell them to, there's
auto parts places?
No, to recycle places.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're valuable. They're valuable, and so they steal them and then they sell them to these recycle places who take them and give them money for it. And so it's kind of popular.
So a car is parked in the Target parking lot. Somebody goes in there, cuts off this catalytic converter, and then sells it in a recycle market, and we see an increase in the theft.
Correct. That's right.
Right. All right.
So again, it was real popular up in the north, further north in this county, and then all of a sudden we started getting hit with them down here. And so they're very quick. It takes them probably 60 seconds to go in and cut it off because they do it that fast. And they were targeting Priuses and Ford trucks. I'm not sure why, but that's what they were targeting. So you have that, but the biggest impact to these numbers right here, and this is how fast crime can change, was we had 2 individuals who, the first guy, he was our bike theft suspect. He had been released. In June, beginning of June, and he started just committing all sorts of crimes here. We have him right now on about 10 cases. That's just this one guy. It's just, and it wasn't just his area that he was doing, he was also doing Carlsbad. So just one individual, we have him on 10 cases, but we're pretty confident there's probably a lot more out there that we don't know about. And then you had another individual who was down birding on the coast. We have him on multiple thefts from vehicles, particularly at the beaches. And this guy also, we have him on at least 10 cases, and there's probably a lot more that people just didn't report. But between these two individuals, that's 20 cases. And then this case here, that's 32. So as you can see, that is going to impact your crime. Two individuals who are doing that much in our area is going to have an impact. So it doesn't take a lot of people to change these numbers. Two can do it, and they don't know each other. The good news is that both of them are in custody right now. Don't know how long they're going to be there, but we've got multiple cases on all of them, and hopefully we won't see the two of them for a long time.
Captain Taft, can I ask you a quick question about the bicycle? So a lot of us ride bicycles. We have a lot of new bicycle riders. Can you give any more information about, are they locked bikes that they're locked being cut? Are they electric bikes? Are they at the beach or other places? Can you tell us anything about what is the profile of this?
A lot of them are not locked. We did have some where the locks were cut. I'm not sure how many were electric. I remember one case that I read that was an electric bike, but for the most part, a lot of them are locked. So this guy right here, this bike theft guy, we got him on video where he's riding a bike. He sees another bike because it looks better. It's in newer condition. He throws that bike down and he goes and gets the other bike and takes off. And we have him on video of that. So that's how easy it was for him. Most are not locked, some are, and then I know of one case of a motorized bike. But this is what we call prolific offenders, where every day they commit crimes. They look for vulnerable things like unlocked cars, bikes that aren't locked, people leaving their purse, in a shopping cart, things like that. And these two individuals, they take advantage of that. They take advantage of people's trust, this is what they do. We both have long histories of thefts and in and out of custody, and unfortunately, they both like to steal from this area. It's what they do. They both like to do that. And so when you have, yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask one more clarifying question? So when it says year to date means January to June. That's the same date that we've talked about. Okay.
Yeah, year to date, January to June. So 6 months. So when that's 6 months, from 1, 2, 3 individuals, you have 32 plus cases. And that's how you can get these numbers up. So for the residents, I don't want them to be afraid that all of a sudden we have this huge outbreak of property crimes. There's really these individuals are the reason why it's so high. And again, the good news is that we've arrested both of these two. We had them on multiple cases. And so hopefully our community won't be seeing them for a long time. And we are working on this one here, and we have some very good leads. I wish I could tell you more, but we do, and we hope to get an arrest out of this one also.
Captain Taft,
yes, sir.
I recall on social media learning about a bike theft in the downtown, from a downtown bike store, where the window to the showroom was broken, and the suspect was eventually arrested using, the helicopter, etc. Is that incident related to this run of crimes related to bike theft?
I want to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure. When was that? And I can tell you.
It was about 3 months ago.
No, it wouldn't have been then. Well, it could have been one of these guys. I'm just not sure which one.
Okay.
And I had one other question too, as long as we're answering some as we go here. So when you said that there was an increase at the beginning of the pandemic for Walmart, Home Depot, and Target, thefts went up. Why is it that thefts would go up at the very beginning of the pandemic when people aren't suffering an economic consequence probably yet, right? So how did you explain that increase?
Well, remember, we shut down many of our stores, restaurants, a lot of the businesses were shut down, and only the essential stores were open. And so we typically have on a daily basis thefts at Walmart, Target, Home Depot. That's kind of normal. But my interpretation of it is, and I'm not in the mind of these criminals, is that that's what was left open. And so you had more of them kind of focusing on the essential stores that are open, and that was Walmart, Target, and Home Depot. And so that's where we saw the spike. And I look at crime once a week and then once a month. And then when I saw this spike, we made some changes in our focus, put it that way. And that's why you see a decrease in it, because sometimes, we're behind. But we see patterns, we notice things, and then we take our resources, and you have plenty of them, and then we focus on where we're seeing the crimes, and then you'll typically see a decrease. So that's kind of how we do it. But I believe that it was because most of the stores were closed, and we saw the increase at the big box stores.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? All right, so that's the thefts. So, and now the burglaries. So I want to explain the burglaries. So again, Sandag put out 46 in 2019 and 67 in 2020. Those are accurate numbers. That's what we told them. But I need to explain why the difference, why there's such a difference. So, and this is what we saw. What I want to highlight to the residents is that residential burglaries did not go up. So I don't want them to fear that somehow we're getting more residential burglaries. That's not the case. What we saw go up was the commercial burglaries in the beginning. We saw commercial burglaries because everything was shut down. And so what we noticed was that individuals were breaking into these closed businesses because there was simply no one there. And that's what we saw in probably the first part of the pandemic. Again, we saw a rise in commercial burglaries, and we believe that it's because they were shut down. And so you have individuals who take advantage of that. They know no one's there, and that happened. So the difference was, 21. The good news is that we did see a decrease. Once businesses started opening, we started seeing a decrease in the burglaries. But it wasn't the residential burglaries. Those haven't changed. It was just simply the commercial burglaries that we saw that increase. So that's what impacts this number here. Again, these are, in a 6-month period, these are small numbers. There's a lot of small numbers except for theft. So when you have a change in your numbers, usually you're going to see these huge percentage changes, which require some explanations. So, but the good news is that, that's how I want to summarize. Our violent crimes, aggravated assaults, only increased by 4 cases. So we had 30 in 2019. We had 34 in 2020. Our property crime increase was primarily impacted by 2 individuals who are responsible for at least 20 crimes. Both are in custody. So I want residents to know that those individuals that are out committing all these crimes are both in jail. Our residential burglaries remain the same. We didn't have this significant increase in residential burglaries, but our commercial burglaries did increase during the shutdown. That we did notice. However, over the last 3 months, we have a significant decrease in robberies. And over the last 3 months, we've had a significant decrease in burglaries. So we are seeing lower numbers now, particularly over the last 3 months for both robberies and burglaries, which is I know a lot of people are concerned about. And again, I want to end this like I started it. Is Encinitas a safe place to live? Again, I've been your chief of police captain for over 2 years, and I can tell you that it is a very safe place to live. We are not being overwhelmed by criminals. Every crime spike, or at least most of them, can be explained. There's usually an explanation. You can't just go off and say, well, we got a 58% increase, because as you can see, yes, it is a 58% increase. However, there is a asterisk by it where here's why. Here's what's really happening, and that is the fact that, you know, when you have individuals who do things like drive down the middle of the sidewalk and try to hit people, you're going to see a lot of victims. And that's where you got your increase, not because there was so many more aggravated assaults, because there was only 4 more in a 6-month period, but it's just, you see the increase in victims. Encinitas is a very safe place to live. I would live here. And the true test of that is, if you ask a cop where they would live and they say, yeah, I'll live in that city, definitely it is a good indicator that you live in a safe city, not a crime-free city, but you live in a very safe city, and it's one of the safest ones in the county. So that's it for the presentation. Any questions, Council?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Mosca.
Yes, thank you, Captain Taft. Clearly, we live in a very safe community, and I think residents feel that and see that on a daily basis. And that's in large part to credit to your leadership and the service of your deputies. So thank you for everything that you guys do. It's also because of the residents that we have. We have a very tight-knit community, and we believe in community policing. We believe in helping each other out, and close contact and communication with your deputies and your office. And so I think that helps out a lot as well. But I think what you ended on was perfect, because, you know, it is obviously a very safe community. And I think it's good that you kind of, put a little bit more meat on the bones of that data and really kind of drill down to let residents know and alleviate them of any concerns that people may have from looking at some data that they may have seen. But, you know, again, clearly and obviously it's a safe community, and you see that all over the place. I did want to know, in terms of, I think that, you know, from time to time you've given us broader presentations on all of the different crime stats. This was really focused on the 2 different areas that Sandag had captured numbers for. Are you going to come back at a later date and talk about other data that you guys have been collecting?
Yeah, I can, not a problem. I coordinate that with the city manager, and I can talk about any areas of concern that I have, any spikes that I've seen, any real big issues in particular areas. I can talk about traffic and where I see majority of the problems of traffic areas are, or where citizens have the most complaints. I can talk about anything, but I can tell you that we're very responsive. When council sends me emails and complaints or issues about traffic, we get on those right away. We're very, very responsive to the residents and what they are concerned about. And so I would encourage you to continue to do that, because having the residents out there and seeing the problems, we can't be everywhere. So I appreciate when residents do say something. That way I can move my resources, or I can focus here and there, because there's only so many of us, and I really need people to tell me where the issues are so that we can respond to them.
So you knew exactly where I was going, and you don't have to tell people that I email you all the time. Clearly, like a lot on the minds of a lot of folks in at least in my area, are traffic concerns. And so definitely, looking at El Camino Real, the intersections there, and on Rancho Santa Fe, Willow Spring, Garden View, Arbor, and so some of those areas. And so we could always double back, but certainly traffic congestion, speeding is always of concern to a lot of residents for in my area. Just wanted to ask one question about the commercial burglaries. We did see that you were talking a little bit about the spike in burglaries was really due to not residential, but commercial, and really at the beginning of the pandemic. So was there any pattern in terms of what places were burglarized? Any location that there's a pattern with? Is it still contained up in the northern portions of ECR, or is it in other areas of the city?
No, there was no pattern. We looked for that because we always look for patterns, and we look for way people, every crook has his way of breaking into a place, but they all seem very random. When we analyze every crime every week, and my analysts look for patterns, but they couldn't really determine any particular pattern for this, except for the fact that all these businesses are closed. They weren't considered essential, and there was simply no one there at all. But there wasn't any particular way they got in. Sometimes they broke a window, sometimes they cut a lock. And the videos that we had, some businesses have them, some don't. I wish they all had them. I honestly do. It would help us out tremendously, because when you have video and we can identify that person, even though we don't know that individual, we have a network throughout this county and into the next county that often can identify that individual. And I might get an email. I've gotten emails back from Riverside saying, hey, I know that person. He's on probation here. And they tell him this is who he is. And that's how we find some people.
Right.
So
right.
I wish more of the businesses had video.
Right. So last question to you, Captain Taft, just in terms of recommendations, you did say that that this city council has been, very much of the mindset that if resources are necessary to police the bad behavior in downtown when we had the alcohol issue, or if we had traffic concerns, this is a city council that has always worked well with you and devoted resources if necessary. So just kind of, when you look at that data, and I think that you've explained it perfectly, are there recommendations that you would make to us in terms of, you also said that you adjust naturally, when you see some of this data, but are there recommendations that you'd make to us about, any kind of course correction, resources, or anything like that you think that we ought to be doing to ensure that these numbers, that we stay a safe community and we see numbers that are decreasing in the future?
No, it's always been pretty easy to get resources where I needed them. So when working with the city manager, it's been really, really easy. The only thing I can say is when we come out of this pandemic, having a deputy or two on a Friday or Saturday night downtown, just walking the beat back and forth, I think that is very helpful, and that's a huge impact on visibility and preventing some of the issues that might occur. So I think that Friday and Saturday night patrol, and even if you just pick one night a week, just having one officer or two dedicated to downtown and not in a car, I'm talking walking, has a huge impact on people's behavior.
I think that's a good idea, and we should get back to, if we haven't found space, a small depot in downtown, we ought to get back to that conversation, especially, when we start to kind of move out of COVID. We should be trying to help you find the type of space that would really kind of facilitate that kind of community policing in our downtown. Thank you, Captain Taft. If that PowerPoint presentation, if you can send that out to us, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that possible, Captain Taft, to send the presentation?
Oh, yes. I've already given it to Jennifer, and she'll send it to you guys.
Okay, great.
Send it to you. Yes, absolutely. And if you have any questions, just email me.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Captain Taft. I really appreciate that insightful look into those numbers, because they don't really say a lot when they're just the numbers by themselves. Something I'm curious about is that we are coming out of a period of time that's been really volatile. Our city's seen a lot of protests. We've seen a lot of beach closures that resulted in conflict, and we also had some civil unrest. And I was aware of one incident where there was a vigil for Black Lives Matter at the Coop that was torn down by somebody, and that person was pushing the organizers there. Is that the type of incident that would be classified as aggravated assault?
If it's a non-injury, it would just be a simple assault. If there's an injury, then we could classify it as an aggravated assault. But so you have two different types of assaults. You have a simple assault and an aggravated assault. Typically, when a person pushes that's a simple assault and there's no injury. So that particular incident there would be in the category of simple assault.
Okay. And did we have any other of those kind of situations during the time period where there were protests and the beach closures and those type of incidents?
Yes, we did actually, but it centered not around the protest, but it centered around the Trump display. So we've had 2 or 3 incidents around the Trump display. As you know, that display was on ECR, it was on 101. So we've had some pushing and shoving at those displays, yes. But then, again, non-injury, simple assault, with the exception of one of them.
Okay, thank you. One last question. Something that stuck with me from the forum that we did in the community where you were so kind to answer so many questions for so long was that you expressed other areas where you could see city resources used to help in the effort to address certain problems. And 2 of them I remember was domestic violence and the other was in mental health. And so I hope that as we continue to work together, we can figure out what that looks like and really put some effort into designing those programs that could be helpful in both of those areas.
Well, I think the city, by forming the hot team, that was a real plus for us, because it's very frustrating when there's not a lot you can do from a law enforcement perspective, and you really need others to assist you when you're contacting some of our local transient in the area. And having a hot team and all the resources that go with it and the right individuals for it was very helpful, because again, some are mentally ill, and having others there that can assist in getting them services was very helpful.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kranz.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Captain Taft. And I did want to also essentially say the webinar that you held on Zoom, that's the last time I've seen you. These pandemic times don't allow us to get together much. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your service to the city of Encinitas and the willingness that you've displayed to work with the community. These are strange times, and your leadership has been very important in addressing concerns of the community. And just like tonight, when you give a little background on the statistics and what has caused them to change. It is that time of service as the captain where sometimes at about this point, the sheriff is thinking about reassigning, and I hope he would, in this particular case, not be doing that. I would like to have you stick around for a couple more years. And my hope also is that the sheriff, who also held a webinar with the elected officials from jurisdictions around the county, he took a lot of feedback. And one of the things that I think I heard a lot on that call was a discussion about looking at new ways to police that would include the mental health services, could be the HOT team that you're talking about. And it's my hope that there's continued work at the sheriff's office to look at ways to implement that in a more robust way. I know there are communities around the country who have made a little more progress along those lines. I think it's a city in Oregon has done so. I think they call it Cahoots. Oakland has done a lot of work along those lines. And it's my hope that the sheriff will tap into your knowledge and leadership to implement some of those ideas countywide and especially here in Encinitas. So thank you again for your service and your time tonight to put some meat on the bones, as Joe mentioned.
And I just have a couple of follow-up questions here at the end. So it really strikes me that a lot of this report doesn't seem like it's particular to the moment. So, I mean, that this was referenced by the deputy mayor's question, but, you know, we had these, we had back-to-back weekends of protests over closures. And then we've had a lot of different rallies, BLM, and then other related to religious freedoms and other things. And then we've had, of course, altercations we've heard about related to mask wearing and your the sheriffs are empowered to enforce mask wearing. And so I just want to make sure that that it does sound like what you've said is that all of that actually didn't result in anything, except for, I guess you did mention that because so many commercial properties were closed, there was an increase in theft at some of those commercial properties. But all the rest of it seemed like you were saying the multiple victims from those 3 aggravated assault, where there actually weren't any victims, but there could have been severe victims where it was a road rage incident. I'm just going to go back to that. I took a few notes here, but just to confirm that it was somebody driving on the sidewalk when he was drunk, a guy getting cut off and having a road rage incident where there was an allegation of a gun, and then another guy who's being teased on the beach by several teens and pulls a knife. None of those people ending up injured. None of those seeming at all related to the pandemic. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that in the big picture, you don't see it being related to any of the pandemic-related unrest.
No, Mayor, I don't. Not those, unless I don't see the connection. I don't see the connection.
Those, but I'm just saying in any other situation.
Oh, the only one I see related is the commercial burglaries. Definitely, I think are related to the closures. Again, remember, Sandag doesn't look at simple assaults either. So, like Deputy Mayor was saying, you had an assault at this memorial, but that assault wasn't included in those numbers that you saw because it was considered a simple assault. So Sandag only looks at aggravated assaults. But as far as the 5 cases that had multiple victims, I can't honestly connect them to the pandemic unless there's some stress that's going along with, like the road rage guy who could have been under stress, maybe lost his job, but I don't know. All I know is the victim said he saw a gun, and we went out to the guy's house, and he said, I did not show him a gun. He said, I had my cell phone in my hand, and I was doing like this towards him. So what it was a gun, I don't know, but we still have to record it as a gun because that's what the victim said. And there were 3 people in that car, so they're all victims.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question just relates to homelessness, because I think we do sometimes see this persistent strain of allegation that there's somehow an increase in crime related to homelessness. And I heard you mention the HOT team, but otherwise I didn't hear any crimes that were related to homelessness.
Well, I looked at that because typically when we have a crime and it involves someone who is what we call transient, doesn't have a home, we normally will record it as transient related. When I looked at aggravated assaults, or I looked at property crimes, the majority of those folks were not transient. There may have been 1 or 2 that I can remember, but the majority of them list an address. And that's kind of how we define whether you're homeless or not, is list the address. But there was no connection that I could find that showed that, the homeless were the reason for the crime spike. No connection that I could find.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. That was all really informative, and I appreciate you taking the time to go through it with us. And it's always interesting to hear the specifics of what it is that goes into these statistics. So thank you so much for your time. All right, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is oral communications.
Mayor, we do have several. Each speaker, when I call your name, you can unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes. The first speaker is Michael George. Michael, you can start when you are ready.
Thank you very much. Let me get my speech. Good evening. My name is Michael A. George. I reside at 1703 Gascony Road, Encinitas, and I'd like to thank you for your service to our community. I am here as the president of the Encinitas Bocce Club. First, I would like to thank you and the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts for your efforts to provide shade coverings for the bocce courts at the community park at Oakcrest. Our whole community will benefit from this improvement. Second, I would like to take some time to present some of the history of the bocce courts. Joseph Granada, who operated a tailor shop in the lumber yard for more than 30 years, had a dream of bringing bocce to Encinitas. It took him a few years to gain support for his dream. In March of 2006, the two courts were open to the public for play. Joe collected cash donations of approximately $35,000, which he gave to the city. In addition to this money, Sierra Pacific West donated concrete construction and services estimated at $50,000. Joseph reached his dream and the community benefited from it. Under Joseph's guidance and experience, the club has grown to about 15 members. Another dream was to make Encinitas Bocce Club a contender and a winner in the Southern California Federation of Bocce Clubs, now numbering 11, located from Little Italy in San Diego to Torrance, California. This dream was happening until the pandemic stopped play. Now Joseph has another dream. As we approach 2021, the 15th anniversary of the courts opening in March, and his 87th birthday, he sees the need for additional courts to accommodate the increased use by the community of bocce courts. I want to thank you for your attention to my presentation. Stay safe, and we will get through this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Heather Odom. And Heather, I just want to confirm with you, you're speaking under oral communications, and then are you speaking on item 8G or item 8H later on the agenda? 8G is the South Coast Highway 101 improvements acceptance, and then 8H was the Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Heather? I see her name. Heather, if you can hear me, you can unmute.
Yep, okay, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And then Heather, are you speaking under oral communications and on a consent calendar item?
I did not get any of that information. I don't know where I am falling tonight.
Okay, what did you want to speak on?
I'm speaking on an experience in the Sharrow, southbound, and the new bike path that's been changed around.
Okay. And then did you want to speak on another item too, or that was it?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, go right ahead. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. My name is Heather Odom, and I am a retired teacher. I spent my career teaching in Fallbrook Union Elementary School District. And I just wanted to share one experience that I had on your territory. I live up here in Vista. I ride down the coast probably twice a week. And it was a Sunday afternoon. I went for a bike ride. I am a cyclist, an avid cyclist. And I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, and this was a traumatic experience, so I'm going to try and get through this. I was southbound when I passed through, is it Chesterfield? At the Kook right there, I popped into the bike path, and then I came out on the other side, the intersection, all the lights, everybody was stopped, so I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to get into the Sharrow. I always look around for other cyclists to ride southbound while taking that lane, because the cars, from my experience, they don't take kindly to a single cyclist in the Sharrow. So I feel much safer when I have other people around me, but there was nobody else there. It was late in a Sunday afternoon. So as I pulled in at the Kook, I looked down in through the bike lane, and I could see all the way down across the bridge in front of San Elijo State Park. And the bike path was full of surfers and kids on scooters, walkers, joggers, dogs, beach cruisers, people carrying chairs, people carrying longboards. So I decided to, as I say, take the lane. So I pulled out into the lane. I was right in the middle of the lane so cars wouldn't try to squeeze down. And as I was just passing the San Elijo State Beach, I could hear the cars coming because the light had changed. I could hear them on my left and they were passing. Maybe 3 or 4 cars came by, and the last car was a car full of teenage kids. You know, they're out enjoying the summer, as was I, and they swooped around me into the right-hand lane, probably giving me maybe 6 to 8 inches of clearance. And I was obviously visible. They're coming downhill. They're leaving from Chesterfield. So I have been visible the whole time that they've been traveling south. At that point, I'm a little bit riled and I thought, I got to get out of the Sharrow. So I start thinking, as when you drive a car, first you got to think about a turn and then you glance and then you go. So right as I'm ready, at this point, I'm right in front of what's the old beach house, the old one restaurant up from the chart house. It's closed. Anyway, I start to think about moving right to get into the bike path because the berms are not there at this point and I can just easily move into the bike path. And I had a motorcycle come up behind me full throttle, going at least 50 to 60 miles an hour. And he passed me on the right. I was seconds away from moving to the right to get into that. Is that my 3 minutes? Oh,
yes, it is.
I'm sorry. Well, he swooshed past me in full motorcycle mode. He was curving in, his knee was dipped. And honestly, I have been a serious cyclist for 30 years. I've been riding since I was 4 years old. And I have never been so close to, honest to God, both of us would have been taken out. Had I started that move, we both would not be here. I would not be here. You would know me only through arrangements being made for lawsuits, funerals, whatever. I have never in my 30 years of riding had anything like this happen to me. The cars and the motorcycles,
Heather,
you have forced us into a situation that is absolutely unacceptable. We have nowhere else to ride.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We will take them under advisement. Thank you.
Something needs to be done immediately. Somebody is going to get seriously hurt.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And I would love to see some changes. I would love to be involved. Just anything I can do to help the situation, I am happy to do that. It needs to be rectified immediately.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next speaker is KB Strange.
Good evening, City Council. The current election season has brought multiple glossy flyers to my mailbox. I recently received a flyer stating that older and sick people need a pot shop in Encinitas. As a pharmacist who operated a pharmacy in Encinitas for 20 years, trust me, Measure H is not about older sick people. It's about selling pot in Encinitas. Pot is used primarily to get high, not to get well. It reminds me of the old time ads for alcohol or tobacco claiming health benefits. More important is the legislative reality that anyone already can possess, grow, and distribute pot. And any sick person or their caregiver can find pot at the click of a computer key. Measure H would bring marijuana storefronts to Encinitas. And this would do two powerful things. Marijuana storefronts would normalize the use of pot for those who are the real market audience, young adults, and makes way for the predatory advertising to our young people. Until you've driven into San Diego and seen the sign twirlers and the billboards for marijuana storefronts, you can't imagine how ugly retail pot stores can be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brenda Tirschfield. Brenda, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor Blakespear, City Council members and staff, and to our new City Manager, Pamela Antle, I extend a warm welcome. Thank you all for your service to our beloved city. My name is Brenda Tirschfield. I'm an Encinitas resident and am speaking as a representative of Now Leucadia, a diverse group of Leucadians dedicated to promoting the vitality and livability of Northwest Leucadia. We are advocates for safe rail crossings, responsible development, and mobility solutions. During the September 16th City Council meeting, an informational report was presented concerning the status of improvements within the Northwestern Leucadia corridor. This report, covering both completed and in-process projects, included such items as parking, road and sidewalks, pedestrian paths, crosswalks, traffic signals, drainage improvements, and possible rail crossings. The report provided an excellent summary of the many issues our growing community is facing. Your continued attention to these pressing issues in this rapidly changing and heavily trafficked corridor is greatly appreciated. I am here tonight to thank you for your commitment, as conveyed by Mayor Blakespear, to go out for a request for proposal, RFP, including preliminary planning, engineering, and design for a North Leucadia rail crossing. It is our understanding that this RFP will be presented in January 2021. A legal and safe rail crossing will support our residents and guests, as well as our businesses on both sides of the track. By providing safe connectivity to parks and beaches, to restaurants, and to retail businesses and services along the rail corridor between Leucadia Boulevard and La Costa Avenue. Committing to the RFP is a big step towards securing safe connectivity for Encinitas residents and Encinitas businesses. Over the years, many of the Encinitas mobility improvements, such as the Santa Fe Rail Undercrossing, the Cardiff Rail Trail, the Cardiff Quiet Zone Rail Crossing, and the many bike lane improvements around the city, to name just a few, have proven to be beneficial to our residents' quality of life, as well as to the vitality and bottom line of our businesses. Now, Leucadia is looking forward to structural improvements and upgrades, such as the aforementioned rail crossings, that will provide the same benefits to the northwestern reaches of our community. Thank you for embracing community input and for your respectful leadership.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next speaker, I just want to clarify so that there are accurate community expectations. Maybe our previous acting city manager might be able to fill in if she's there, but my understanding was that the RFP is going to be released in January. So I don't know if that means that it returns in January, but I just wanted to make sure that we got that clarified.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. We appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Oh, yes.
This is Jennifer Campbell. Thank you very much, Council. Yes, the RFP will actually go out in January. It usually is out for several weeks. Staff then has to evaluate the responses of the request for proposal before awarding. So that does take a while, but yes, it would be scheduled to go out for request for proposal in January.
Thank you.
Great. Our next speaker is Susan Turney. Susan, you can start when you're ready, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Susan Turney, Encinitas City Council, District 2 candidate. Last night at the Coast News's Clean Campaign Forum, part of the Coast News Clean Campaign Pledge Initiative, the mayor claimed, ironically, during the conspiracy theory session, that all 3 challengers were supported by a PAC consisting of the BIA, the gun lobby, and the Republican Party. When pressed, she named the PAC, called Ethics and Transparency in Government. I transcribed the mayor's comments from the event replay. She said, quote, "The flat reality is that the PAC that is supporting the 3 opponents is funded by Republicans, gun owners, and the BIA. I mean, that is just a fact," end quote. She then directed viewers to check the city's website to see these reports, concluding, quote, "You should take a look at it," end quote. As I was the last of the group to speak, I had time while the others were making their remarks to check the PAC's reporting on the city's website. Of the 12 reports filed by the Ethics and Transparency PAC, none of them, I repeat, none of them, listed any of us as being supported by the PAC. The mayor predicted that we would say, quote, we don't know who they are, end quote, meaning the PAC. I can speak only for myself, and I don't know who they are. And I don't appreciate the mayor setting me up to be called a liar. I'm especially disturbed by her claim, as neither I nor my campaign would ever have anything to do with the groups funding that PAC. The mayor's lies were damaging both to me personally and to my campaign. I'm hated by the BIA, as many of you know. I have never and would never own a gun, and I have never been a Republican or cast a single Republican vote. A lifelong Democrat, I'm now registered no party preference, and I'm not beholden to any political party. That is a good thing to have when you want diversity on a local nonpartisan council. The mayor speaks with authority and carries the weight of her office in her statements, and she knows this. Residents are voting daily, and she has clearly seized on some last-ditch effort to save the incumbents. The mayor stepped out of her role as a mayoral candidate to weigh in on the District 2 race. The mayor signed the Coast News Clean campaign pledge, as did I. I'm asking her tonight to correct her comments and retract her lie regarding my support by this PAC. She could have done this last night, but did not. Tonight, I'm giving her a second opportunity. Thank you.
Next speaker is Cindy Cremona. Cindy, you can start when ready, and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Kathy. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Cindy Cremona. I reside and vote in Encinitas. I'd like to comment on last night's Coast News Clean Campaign Zoom forum. The mayor, shockingly, accused a private citizen by name of harassing and stalking her. I'd like to know if this information has been substantiated or if the mayor has reported specific incidents to the police. If not, why not? Additionally, did the mayor collude with Kate Steinberg of the Coast News to use information taken from a private Facebook page that Ms. Steinberg was a member of, using this information to denounce a private citizen who is also one of the mayor's constituents? Lastly, has the mayor confirmed her accusation about candidates Thunder, Turney, and Riley being funded by a PAC led by the BIA, the gun lobby, and Republicans? If so, where is this information specifically to be found? If not, what is the mayor doing to retract this information publicly so as not to harm to the opposition candidates' campaigns? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jeff Morris. Jeff, you can begin when ready, and you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm not this bad guy that you guys think I am. I wanted to touch base with Catherine about what she said last night. You know, I wasn't stalking your husband. I was looking at Leach Tag tax returns, and I noticed they donated to his husband's company. When I Googled his company, it didn't show up, so I drove over there to see if it existed. It didn't. I spoke to somebody there. They said there was another North Coastal, whatever his company is, and I asked if he worked there, and they said no. So I wasn't stalking. I'm doing research. I think a big problem in this town is there's no communication. That's the #1 problem with everything. If we spoke together and talked together, we wouldn't be running into these situations. I think that because of my background and not being used to this environment, I just speak right from the cuff. But I think I speak what a lot of other residents think. I know I'm kind of hitting you guys hard, but I'm also doing a lot of research. The police scanners, I'm following that. I've been to all the hotels that you guys never talk about all the homeless in these hotels that you filled, that I've seen drug crimes and tons of crimes. You guys will just keep ignoring that. If we had communication, there wouldn't be so much tension in this town, and you keep avoiding the homeless. The more homeless we get, the more crimes that we're going to have, and this is only going to continue to get worse. So I'm looking 5 years out when we've got 10,000 homeless people and transients in this new city, and there's crime everywhere. So I would like to see more communication. The guys that love you guys, let them have their time so we don't need to listen to them. And the guys that are like me, let's have another separate time. Let's just talk it out. I know Tony Kranz has talked to me about let's talk in one-on-one, but I'm not very good if someone's not honest to me. So I like honesty. I don't lie. I document everything. It's on my page. I open it up for Kate Steinberg for anybody to come in and see. So I'm not trying to hide anything. We need communication. I've learned in life that telling the truth and proper communication is the best way to avoid conflict. And I would love to see that. I'm not against any of you guys. I know my methods are rough. It's all I know though. You know, if there was communications, I wouldn't be so darn rough. So I apologize for anybody I've offended, but I care about my town, man. I love this town and I want to take care of it. And it means everything to me. And I wish I didn't even know you guys. I just wish I could just go surfing again and not deal with this, but I can't. But I hope we can work this out, guys. I'm not that good guy. So that would be nice if we could have some proper communication. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Well, thank you for your comments, Jeff. And I appreciate you explaining the situation and offering that feedback. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Mayor, that does conclude oral communications.
Okay, thank you. We do not have a report from closed session. Do we have any changes to the posted agenda?
There are no changes to the posted agenda. And for the consent calendar, item 8M, we do have a speaker on that.
Okay, I would entertain a motion on the balance.
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar, but I did want to, if there's a second, I did want to comment on one of the items, if that's okay.
I second it.
I also wanted to talk about 8G. I don't need a staff report, but I just wanted to ask a question as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a comment too on one of the items. So maybe we should all have our comments and then we can move the consent calendar.
I just wanted to praise the Parks and Rec folks for moving Olympus Park further along the line, further along the path of being completed. I know that we're allocating money back into that fund, but I think that you know it's continuing to be right where we thought it was in terms of the budget impact from the very beginning, and the money that we're putting back into that is parkland funds. Money that's dedicated, committed for parks. And so I think it's a good story and it's coming together. It's going to be an amazing amenity for the entire city, but especially for the folks in the northwestern portion of our city. And so I just wanted to thank our city staff, especially Jennifer Campbell and her team for moving that to almost completion and keeping it on budget. Also, near and dear to my heart is 8M, which is the North Coast Repertory Theater. I was on this subcommittee at one time with Mayor Blakespeare. Tony took my spot, and I can see that Tony has really helped and has moved this to actually a situation where we may see a performing arts center in the city of Encinitas and in my district, or actually we share that space.
It's my district. What are you talking about?
You're right. I took it back. I took it back. It is District 1. It's right on that line. But it's so important. I mean, I think that's a perfect spot for a performing arts center in the Encinitas Town Ranch Center area, and that's a parcel that's been vacant for a while. People asking about that all the time. I think that's a perfect amenity for our city. Perfect amenity for that location. And I know a lot of people will absolutely visit that performing arts center, be a patron of that art center, and it will really add to the culture of our city. And so I'm thankful that the mayor and Councilmember Kranz is bringing this home and putting together a deal with the North Coast Repertory Theater. This is important for our city, so thank you.
Yes, and I think, does the city staff have some additional information to provide about this excellent development? So just to put this in a little context for people who don't know, the North Coast Repertory Theater, which is currently in Solana Beach, is proposing to build a new theater in Encinitas. So over on a piece of property that we own, the city owns, and we have been planning to have a theater there for many years, and it's been difficult to find a partner. So I want to ask staff if did you have a little video to play and some information?
We don't have the video tonight, but just to reiterate, this is a lot in Encinitas Ranch Town Center known as Lot 16. This is a parcel that is dedicated to the city specifically for a theater pad. There have been a lot of talk on developing this parcel, and I'm very happy we have been in talk with North Coast for many years and at different occasions. I'm extremely happy that through the work of North Coast, especially Marion Dodson, for not giving up on their idea and thought that we look like that we can negotiate and bring this to fruition. We're very excited. It would be a 15,000 square foot theater that would have almost 350 seats. And as you know, North Coast has a wonderful following. There are many people here from Encinitas, Carlsbad, Oceanside, Del Mar, Solana Beach that do attend their theater productions. And I think we have Marion here to talk tonight, but I'm very happy with all the work of council and the subcommittees and just not giving up on a project. That's what it is. Sometimes it takes tenacity and it's great, and always continue to keep the conversations rolling because we will get there. And I really feel that we are almost there. And so I'm very happy to be working on this project with council and with the North Coast Repertory Theater.
Does Marion want to say a few words?
She's on tonight.
We need to pull it off consent.
That's all right. I thought maybe just a couple sentences, but if it's all right.
Well, I think Marion is signed up to speak on item 8M.
Oh, okay.
Marion, do you want to speak?
Marion Dodson.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There she goes. You just have to unmute.
All the Zoom stuff. There you go.
There you go.
Good evening. Yes, the North Coast Repertory Theater has been interested in relocating in having a larger theater for some time. And we've looked at this lot before, and we've always known what a good deal it was, but we really just weren't quite ready. Well, I think the third time's a charm here. But we're a very active theater. We have, our hopes are to have probably someplace between 300 and 350 seat performing arts theater on lot 16. We will still keep our other theater, our existing theater in Solana Beach for our children's theater, because there isn't enough room on lot 16 to put everything. And that was our struggle. We couldn't get everything there. But we do want to have our main stage theater on lot 16. Eventually, we hope to have everything in one place. But until everything is constructed and we can find other space later after we have the theater, then we can think about having it complete. That's really the plan. We have an architect who lives in Cardiff, actually, who's been very helpful. Steve Dalton, and having us look at some designs. He's contacting theater, specifically theater architecture people, so that we can get the inside of the theater also to be as nice as the outside. And it's a big project. We're getting excited about it. Everything at the theater, of course, is quite quiet right now. But actually, in many ways, it's a good time for us to get started. It's going to take probably several years for this to happen. But in the downtime that we're going through with everything with COVID, we can at least get our new theater going. And it also will have a great deal of outdoor space. The lot is actually quite large, but it only can have a building of 15,000 square feet, and that would be for the theater. But the actual lot is much bigger, and we plan some very nice outdoor promenades, so to speak, or pavilions that will be adjacent to the theater for social events and so forth.
Thank you so much, Marion, for all the information. I think we do have an appeal and a big packed agenda, so we're going to need to move through the consent calendar right now. But thank you for coming tonight and providing words.
I'll be back if you need me.
We are so excited about this, and thank you, like Jennifer said, for sticking with it. I know that you wanted a bigger theater at first, and I'm so glad you could accommodate into the space that was available.
And when will the video be available on the North Coast Rep website?
You know, Jennifer has a video that she can share with you of the architecture.
I did see it, and I would like to show the public.
Oh, I see.
We can release.
I'll check with the architect, but I'll let you know. I'll contact you directly.
And thanks for your perseverance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think there was one other consent item that Kelly, or Deputy Mayor, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, this one was, let me remind myself of the number, 8G, and it was the notice of completion on the South Coast Highway 101 bike lane improvements. And I just had this question I wanted to ask on behalf of Michael Von Neumann of Bike Walk Encinitas to know if we plan on painting the speed legends on the highway, if that was included as part of this effort, or if that is not going to take place.
So, Deputy Mayor, this is Ed Wimmer. Oh, go ahead. So, Deputy Mayor, this is Ed Wimmer. We're going to go ahead and put those speed pavement legends in under a different contract. So, with council's permission, you can act on this notice of completion, and then we're going to do a separate work order and get those speed pavement legends in with a different contractor.
Okay, great news. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, so do we have any other consent items that have been pulled?
Now we don't, because you talked about 8M and Marion already spoke. So the motion and the second would be to adopt the consent calendar.
That was my motion.
Mine too. I mean, mine second.
Okay, so I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Hubbard is absent. Councilmember Mosca?
Yes.
Councilmember Kranz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hinsey?
Yes.
Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously with Councilmember Hubbard absent.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We now move to the appeal, item 10A.
Okay. So let me pull up the appeal. Do you have anything you want to say about that, City Clerk?
Do you want me to read the procedures for the appeal hearing?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is an appeal. The first item that will happen is the staff report will be given. Next, council will disclose any other information they have received that is not included in the staff report. At that time, they will also have preliminary questions. The mayor will then open the public hearing. The appellant will go first and has 10 minutes, and this presentation includes any presentations they have of attorneys, engineers, etc. And then next, the applicant will present, and they have 10 minutes as well. And again, their presentation includes any and all representatives of the applicant. Once that is done, then we will have public speakers, which we do have. I do not believe we have any public speakers. Then we will have a rebuttal by the applicant, which is 5 minutes, a rebuttal by the appellant, which is 5 minutes. At that time, the mayor will close the public hearing, and we will continue to council discussion and action.
Okay, thank you. So that means that we'll go to the staff report first.
Mayor Blakespear, do you see that?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, council members. Mayor Blakespear. This is the Vulcan 12 Density Bonus Appeal, case number 4017. And it's not moving. This is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the Vulcan 12 Density Bonus Project. The approved project by the Planning Commission consists of 11 market rate residential units and 1 affordable very low income unit, associated site and road improvements, 1 temporary construction trailer, a condominium form of legal ownership, the consolidation of the 2 underlying legal lots, and the demolition of all on-site structures. Staff recommends that the City Council deny the appeal that was filed and affirm the Planning Commission's approval of the Vulcan 12 density bonus project. Site location is 555-571 North Vulcan Avenue, located along North Vulcan Avenue, pretty much across from Panikin, and is currently was the location of a former commercial operation of 2 buildings that ceased operation in 2018 and is a former warehouse for window making. Project site is located in the North 101 Corridor Specific Plan and within the community of Leucadia. Property is in the NR15 zone and the Residential 15 General Plan land use designation. Site is also within the coastal zone, and all applicable utilities and services are in place to serve this proposed development. As stated, project is a density bonus project of 12 multifamily units, 11 market rate detached residential units, and 1 very low income unit, which would be identified as Unit 6. Each unit includes 3 bedrooms, range from approximately 1,700 square feet to 1,800 square feet of living area on 2 floors, and attached 446 square foot garage on the first floor, all with private open space yards that range from approximately 600 feet to 1,100 square feet in area. All units would take direct access from 2 20-foot driveways accessed directly from North Vulcan Avenue. And associated site improvements include 3 bioretention basins along North Vulcan Avenue, grading, walls, landscaping, decorative pavements, street improvements along the east side of North Vulcan Avenue. The colors also indicate the placement of each unit's color and floor plan to display the variety of the lot. After deliberation about the southern property line, an issue that was brought up, the subject of this appeal, the Planning Commission added 2 conditions of approval. The first stating, to the satisfaction of the Development Services Department, a 6-foot tall masonry wall shall be depicted on the project plans and constructed along the south property line. And the second condition of approval that was added, prior to building permit issuance, the applicant shall work with the Development Services Department to provide facade building articulation and enhancements along the rear facades of units 10, 11, and 12, located along the southern property line. To build this project, 4 discretionary actions are required. 3 are listed here: a lot line adjustment for the consolidation of 2 lots, design review permit, review of the architecture of all 12 units and site improvements, and a coastal development to ensure compliance with the city's local coastal program. The 4th permit is the tentative map density bonus, which would place all 12 units into a condominium form of legal ownership and reserve Unit 6 as the 1 affordable unit for very low income households. Along with the tentative map density bonus, a waiver was requested and a concession incentive was requested. This density bonus project relies upon state density bonus law pursuant to California Government Code 65915, which allows for the waivers of development standards to physically construct the development and proposals for specific incentives or concessions which result in identifiable actual cost reductions. The waivers are to reduce the front and side yard setbacks from 15 feet and 5 feet respectively, and to reduce the minimum distance between buildings to at least 8 feet, and increase the lot coverage to 41% above the maximum 40%. The concession incentive would increase to allow all units to exceed the 22 and 26 foot height limit as measured from the lowest grade, which is the Leucadia 100-year floodplain, but not exceed the city's overall 30-foot height limit.
Hey, Jay.
Yes.
One question on that slide. The 41% above the maximum 40, does that mean that it's 1% higher than the maximum 40, or is it 41% higher than the 40?
It is 1% higher above the maximum.
Okay, thank you.
So it's an increase of 1%.
Got it.
Thank you. More specifically, this figure shows the applicant prepared this figure demonstrating where the waivers are being, a comparison of the waivers requested and how it relates to the standard, development standard for setbacks. The proposed structures are shown in gray. The reduction of the front and side yard setbacks are shown in red, 15 feet along the front. And then you would have the 5-foot setback along the north and south property lines. And blue depicts the standard distance between buildings to at least 8 feet. And the increase in lot coverage is 1% above the maximum 40, to give you an idea of how the project would look if it had met all of the development standards without the waivers. So for the staff, the state density bonus law requires local agencies to grant waiver requests unless one or more of the following findings, there are 4, can be made to deny any waiver of development standard request. Staff was able to make the findings to grant the waivers. The waiver request for setback reduction, minimum distance between buildings, and increase in lot coverage. The first finding is, without the waiver, the application of the development standard will have the effect of physically precluding the construction of the development. To build the project, 12 detached units were approved by the Planning Commission, and the waiver setbacks and minimum building separation and lot coverage were able to be proven. The second is, the waiver would have a specific adverse impact upon health, safety, or the physical environment, and for which there is no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the specific adverse impact. No adverse impact to the health, safety, or physical environment had been identified in this built environment. And the project was also determined to be exempt for infill development pursuant to CEQA section 153, guidelines section 15332. The waiver would have an adverse impact on any real property listed in the California Register of Historical Resources. There are no historical resources on site. The waiver would be contrary to state or federal law. Through the density bonus law, which is in effect state law, the applicant is relying upon state density bonus law to build this project. Therefore, the waivers requested are not contrary to state or federal law. Public input.
Could you go back over item point 1 there and just explain a little bit about the process that staff went through to determine that that these reductions in setbacks and also the space between the buildings needed to happen in order for this development to happen? Can you just kind of walk us through that analysis, why it's needed?
Yeah, are you talking about this first bullet right here?
I am. I'm just interested in the analysis of, this waiver, without this waiver, without these setbacks reductions, then this entire project wouldn't happen. How do we look at that, and how do we know that it wouldn't happen but for this waiver?
Right. In combination with, do you guys see this waiver exhibit? So depending on the type of project that was proposed, the applicant is proposing a 12-unit detached project. So we also looked at the alternatives of how this applicant could actually provide 12 units. The one scenario up front would be that you would end up with one bulky, cohesive structure centered, I'm making this up, in the middle of the lot, which would be unlike anything in the vicinity based on the results of the community character report and such. So that said, in order to have this project fit into the neighborhood, we needed to, in order to have it reasonably fit in and meet the community character, the reduction of the setbacks, and meet the minimum distance required between buildings, which also would include the backup spaces for garages, fire lanes, required garage depths, the comparison of existing setbacks in the neighborhood compared to the setbacks that the applicant is proposing, building height, understanding that all of these development standards work together, and when you change one, it changes another. Given the project proposed and how we understand the project, this is a reasonable request.
So in other parts of our city, you'll see that it's very common that condos will have a common wall and that they're not detached, but they're attached. Like for instance, in Village Park, there's a lot of duplexes or condos that are attached. Why couldn't this be attached?
This could have been attached. It could have been an attached project. However, then in which case we would have, it's also a function of design what the applicant was going for to try to maintain individual residential structures. Being a condominium does not mean, being in a condominium form of ownership does not mean that you have to be attached units. It's just a form of legal ownership. Furthermore, this project is, the property is zoned residential 15 units to the acre, and it is 1 acre. So there is enough room to allow for detached units also.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I guess I was just playing the devil's advocate and saying that I could, I'm not an architect, but that I could imagine this differently and construct in a way that you wouldn't need reduction in setbacks or the space between the structures. And so I'm just trying to still poke at, is the point of the first one, what analysis do we go through to kind of understand that they absolutely need this, or this development wouldn't be necessary? Is it that there are alternatives that they could have proposed that would work on this site?
They did. I can cover a lot of those questions or when I address a lot of the neighborhood questions. And the applicant also could speak to that also of a lot of the other alternatives. But one of the main alternatives is when, if they decided to use the full extent of the density bonus law, they would have been permitted, and if the design and the waivers were requested in such a way, they could have built up over 20 units on the property. What was interesting is that the property being 1 acre, the base density being 15 units to the acre, and they actually, by right, could build only 11 units on the property. And so they are really 1 unit over what the regular density would allow for them.
All right, fair enough. It sounds like there's going to be more discussion on this item and that the applicant will address it as well. So I'll just leave it on my notes and fair enough, you'll address it at some point.
And can I, since we're on this slide, I just want to ask one quick question about this. So it says standard driveway width. Did we look at minimum driveway width so that we could move those buildings back off of the property line?
Fire department requires a 20-foot wide driveway width, which is the standard driveway width in this case.
Okay, and is that something that we have exceptions for in other parts of the city, or is that what we require?
For the fire department required 20 feet in this case for the number of units that are served off that one driveway. So we do have 16-foot driveways, but it serves 1 home, and I believe maybe 2. But in this case, for example, if you look at the one driveway, we're serving 6 homes. And so you need a minimum of 20 feet.
Okay. And so, and to your last point that you were making to Councilman Mosca, when you said they could build over 20 units, that would be at the base density, which they have of R15, and then using density bonus to the max.
That's correct.
So it might be configured differently on the lot. Like maybe it would actually respect the 15 foot, but it would be more units. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. Right. And it might even be 3 stories.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So public input. Citizen participation plan was held on October 22nd, 2019. All property owners and tenants within 500 feet were notified. 9 members of the public attended, but only 6 signed in. And those comments were generally density bonus law, building height, traffic generation, stormwater drainage, frontage improvements, and parking. At the Planning Commission hearing of the public notice going to the Planning Commission hearing of August 20, the same property owners or same addresses were also notified. And the comments regarded overcrowding. The southerly 5-foot setback is too short. The homes would tower over the mobile home park. The mobile home park was not notified. They were requesting the waivers to be denied. A 15-foot setback was appropriate. There was discussion about asbestos with the demolition and the increase of noise. There was a request to build a 6-foot wall, not fence, along the southern property line with the mobile home park. And this notice for tonight's City Council hearing went out on October 1st. As of this afternoon, a significant number of emails were received opposing the project, with a few emails in support. It should be noted that of the over 40 emails that were received in opposition, many were duplicates. Of course, the neighborhood was trying to reiterate emphasize their position. And then the few emails in support were, emphasized that the proposed project replaces the industrial land use that is in place. So the Planning Commission approved the project on August 20th, and the appeal was filed on August 28th. The appellant's interest is to maintain the quality of life we Sea Air Mobile Home Park, to enjoy, which includes the feeling of safety and refuge provided by our homes in the low-income Sea Air Mobile Home Park. Sea Air Mobile Home Park is one of the earliest affordable housing communities in Encinitas, dating back to the early 1950s, and has a sizable percentage of senior citizens as residents. The Sea Air Mobile Home Park is located directly south of the project and shares a common property line. So for ease, staff bundled the application and bundled the arguments accordingly. The appellant's full arguments are documented in the agenda report. In this case, the appellant made 3 points. The 5-foot setback does not allow for landscaping and screening, privacy, access for emergency personnel, and the likelihood for the spread of fire, earthquakes. Setbacks are for healthy air, light, residence, and noise separation, allowing for mental and physical health. And the applicants are creative people who should have creative solutions, believing that the applicants did not try it hard enough. Staff responded that the project is conditioned to require generous landscaping. The fire department and building departments reviewed the project against current fire codes and building codes and recommended approval of the proposed project with conditions of approval. The 5-foot setback increases the setback not currently provided with the existing commercial structure and cargo containers, which are located along the property line. And the 5-foot setback applies to the entire project to establish building envelopes for the project proposed under state density bonus law. The increased setback would reduce unit sizes, garage depths, garage backup, driveway width, and increase the bulk and mass for structures proposed. Additionally, there are 9 mobile homes located within 5 feet of the property line. The mobile home park is legal non-conforming in that the underlying zoning is NR25, a multifamily zone. Mobile home parks are under the purview of the state of California. So all the structures as where they are located cannot be moved, and they are legal non-conforming. Continued, the appellant also states that the project disregards human and environmental factors and are not reasonable when the city promotes itself as responsible development. Waivers are not granted to remove setbacks, and the reduced setback only benefits the applicant and affects the mobile home park residents along the shared property line. Again, the government code section state density bonus law allows an applicant for density bonus to request the city for specific waivers and incentives and concessions. Therefore, the proposal for the waivers is not contrary. And the project waivers, concession, and incentives were supported based upon reasonable documentation within the density bonus report, that site constraints exhibit that was provided, and the community character report that was provided. The 26-foot tall residences are too tall. Windows impinge on privacy and the quiet nature of the mobile home park. As stated earlier, the Planning Commission added 2 conditions of approval: the increased articulation and a new 6-foot tall wall to allow for separation. The project height complies with the surrounding development. Adjacent single-family residences to the east are 2-story, and the community character report identified that there's an even mix of essentially 50-50 of single-story and 2-story residences in the neighborhood. Therefore, the project height of 2 stories complies with the surrounding development. And project is also subject to noise, lighting, odor performance standards in the municipal code, and any future complaints can be made to the Code Enforcement Division to address. Lastly, existing residents chose to live in the vicinity given the school train and Vulcan traffic, not next to this project. It's important to note that the proposed project will place an existing legal non-conforming commercial use. This project is zoned NR15. That commercial use was legal non-conforming, which was also a high-intensity use and noise generator. Staff's recommendation is that the City Council deny the appeal and affirm the Planning Commission's approval of the Vulcan 12 Density Bonus Project based on the following findings: that the project is consistent with the general plan, local coastal plan, North 101 Corridor specific plan, municipal code, design review guidelines, and state density bonus law, and the appeal lacks evidence to substantiate the claims. And this concludes my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you just clarify what it is that the high intensity use and noise generator is? I didn't find that in the staff report.
Oh, it's the high intent. I'm talking about the existing commercial use that is on the property.
Which is storage, right?
Which is storage, and it's windows, window making, window storage, the trucks that come in and out.
Okay. Was there any conversation at the Planning Commission about the use on the other side, which is even more industrial, right? That's the
RCP? No, there was no discussion about RCP.
Okay, so are we anticipating having creating some potential nuisance complaints when residential moves in right next to a more heavy industrial use? Or do we have any strategy about preventing that?
We did not talk about that, no.
Okay. Okay, so now we go to asking council to disclose any other information they have received that is not included in the staff report. I will start and say that I have not received any other information except for emails that we've all received. And I did drive by and look at it. Would the deputy mayor like to go next?
Sure. So I received the emails we all received, and I spoke this with Dawn Rideout, who I believe is acting as the spokesperson on behalf of the appellant. And I too rode my bike by today and checked out sea air and the boundaries around this parcel.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Krantz?
Yes, same emails, and did stop by the site.
Councilmember Mosca?
Yeah, the same emails. I did visit the site, and that's about it. No conversations with anybody, any persons related to the appeal or the application.
Okay, thank you. So now let's go to preliminary questions. Does anybody have any to ask staff? Councilmember Hinsey?
So my question, I believe it's just a clarifying question, is that the applicant could have chosen which waiver to seek, and they chose to seek the south side for the setback waiver, but they could have equally chosen the east side to seek that waiver. Is that correct?
They could have asked for any waiver, any setback waiver. They specifically asked for a 5-foot setback on the north and south property lines, and to go 15 to 5 feet, and to go from 20 feet to 15 feet for the front yard setback. They're maintaining the 15 feet for the rear yard setback, which is the east property line.
And I just want to make sure that I understand there's no difference between the single family setback requirement and the multifamily setback requirement that's different between the eastern boundary and the southern boundary? They're both 15 feet.
Actually, there is, because the property is zoned multifamily and R15, there is a requirement to have a 15-foot setback from the rear yard because of its adjacency to the single-family homes on the east side.
Would you explain that again in a different way?
Because there are single-family homes directly east of the project site, the setback is increased to 15 feet.
So then how is that different from the multifamily side on the southbound boundary?
There is no requirement to where, let me go back. The code, the specific plan specifically says if you are adjacent to a single family zone, you have to increase the setback to 15 feet, which the applicant has done and they are maintaining. They're utilizing on the north and south side use of the density bonus law to reduce the setback from 15 to 5 feet. So one is a requirement and the other is use of the waiver to reduce.
So could the applicant have used a waiver to waive the requirement for the 15-foot single family setback?
They could have, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to see a map and see how that would have changed things too, because it's because of the driveways. If they'd done it on the east side, would that have made a difference? Sure. But maybe
possibly. I mean, I could show you the exhibit again if it's easier to visualize it.
Okay, and if you don't mind, yeah, and then we'll go to you, Tony. We'll go to you, Councilmember Kranz.
Yeah, so the exhibit might be useful. So
can you just orient where north and south is in this legend?
Sure. This is North Vulcan Avenue, runs north-south. So north is the top of your screen.
Okay.
South is where the mobile home park is. And then we have residential 8 single-family zone, the single-family homes on this side. And then on the other side of North Vulcan Avenue, right here is the railroad tracks.
Right. So, I mean, just to go back to the point that the deputy mayor was asking about, it seems like that on the far right, if that wasn't 15 feet, that wouldn't do anything because of the way the buildings are lined up, right? It seemed to me like the standard driveway width is what would need to be reduced to get those away from the edge. I mean, unless they reconfigure the whole lot, right? But if you left the buildings, these buildings the way they are, that it doesn't help anything to reduce that setback to 5 feet instead of the other setback. Is that true? Does that sound right?
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay.
Well, what I was thinking when I looked at it is that the buildings could all be longer and skinnier, so they could actually reach all the way back to that eastern boundary and be thinner without altering the width required of the 20-foot driveway clearance.
Does that work for units? Like, can they become longer and skinnier and still?
It gets to a point where I guess the best analogy would be living in a trailer, you know, and not saying that, I mean, but when I say trailer, you've got width now versus, and I know the applicants were trying to provide a single family residential experience. So, and I do know that they wanted to be able to provide a approximately 1,700 square foot home. I do know that. So there are some challenges by providing a unit that's 1,700 square feet, which is comparable to the neighborhood, give or take, based on the community character report. But then in terms of width and length, I can't answer that correctly. The applicant would be best to do that.
Okay.
On the slides, is there one that shows the layout of this? I want to orient these units in a way that I'm clear on front yard versus rear yard?
This is the front right here. So
these are all, so the 3 homes to the north and the 3 homes to the south, the front door on the south side, the front door is facing north. Is that correct?
Yeah, all the doors face into the driveway.
Except for the center 6, right? Is it the drawings that I see, it looks like they are entering into the walkway.
No, this is actually all landscaping or private yards.
And so while you were noodling and coming up with a strategy with the developer, was there any talk about making those units have a common wall?
There was a small discussion, but they really wanted to have detached units to try to match the single family neighborhood nearby.
Well, and I guess that is admirable, and I think that it would probably allow them to sell better. But at the same time, we do have some impacts to the neighbors to the south that would be mitigated if there were common walls in those 3 clusters of buildings. So, you know, at what point do we say, yeah, we'll let you reduce these rear yard setbacks on the north and south in order to have 12 single family instead of having 6 single family and essentially 3 duplexes. And I asked this question, you know, to be sure that if we're going to approve these waivers, that we have made sure that we've done everything possible to, you know, work this problem in a way that reduces the impact. I mean, I'm looking at the red lines and the purple lines or blue lines, whatever you want to call them. And it just seems to me that with common walls and those 6 in the middle, you may not get your 15-foot setback, but you wouldn't have 5 either. And so I don't expect you, Jay, to answer that, but maybe the applicant, when he's making his presentation, can address that particular issue.
Okay, good. Are there any other questions from council? I don't see.
I mean, I think that what Councilmember Kranz was hitting on is something that's just kind of something that I'm thinking about too, in terms of just, you know, the analysis the city goes through to determine that a waiver is necessary, that especially that first point that was brought up, the first factor that has to be found to deny, you know, a waiver. And I'm just trying to understand the analysis that goes through there, goes on for the city to understand. And then even the applicant kind of talking to the different designs. I mean, so far what I've heard is that, well, they could have built something more intense in terms of a use of this property. And so therefore, you know, essentially any waiver that they ask for is something that should be granted because they could have done something more intense. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing so far, but would love to hear more on this, on that point.
Okay, well then let's go to that part of the presentation. So I will open the public hearing. And now we have the appellant who goes first for 10 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Good evening, council members, and welcome to the new city manager. Thank you for hearing our appeal. My name is Don Rideout, and I live at 145 Basil Street in Encinitas. I'm acting as spokesperson for Sierra because I have friends who live there and they asked me to speak on their behalf. This appeal, as you already know, is all about the crucial importance of affordable housing in our community, both new and existing. As you said, you're all familiar with Sierra. You see it as you drive past on Vulcan or 101. It's admittedly old and funky and run down and non-conforming. When people say keep Leucadia funky, this is what they're talking about. Keeping Leucadia funky is ultimately a losing cause, but because we all know that Leucadia is changing And realistically, that's not going to stop. But for now, sea air represents the old funky Leucadia. The housing there consists primarily of old trailers, most with additions. A few are 2-story, most are 1-story. This is not a tiny house development like you see on HGTV, nor is it like any other mobile home park in Encinitas. This is down-to-earth affordable housing. 100% of sea air is affordable housing. But if you only look at the physical aspects of sea air, you will miss the point. The essence of sea air is the people who live there. They are largely senior citizens, although there are also a few children and young adults. Several of them are caring for handicapped family members. They are low and very low income households. Not all of them, but most of them. Their homes and yards are tiny, but they love living there. As you indicated earlier, you all went by to see it. And I know that several years ago, Mayor Blakespeare, when you were campaigning, you visited there and spoke with the people there, and they remember that. And they asked you at that time about your stand regarding development, and you said you were in favor of responsible development. They fully agreed with you then, and they still do. Our appeal is somewhat different from others that you have heard. If this was somewhere else in the city, anywhere else, the appellants would have lawyers and consultants lined up to argue their case. The residents of Sea Air don't have that kind of money, and they are also not that kind of people. So you won't hear us railing against putting affordable housing next door, because Sea Air is already affordable housing, perhaps the most affordable in the city. Residents of Sea Air believe in affordable housing and they support it. You also won't hear us complain about density, because Sea Air itself is very dense, perhaps the most dense in the city. So why are we appealing this project? Because when it comes to development, details are important. Details matter. And in this case, the setback on the south side of the project is a detail that is unacceptable to the people of Sea Air. We believe it should also be unacceptable to you. What is our objection to the setback? There are 3 key reasons. The first is that the reduction from 15 feet to 5 feet is excessive and unnecessary. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more in a moment. The second is that this is a case of socioeconomic inequity. In other words, those who are already disadvantaged are the only ones being impacted by this reduction in setback. The third reason is really a question. Is this really the best affordable housing project for this site at this time? So now I'm going to elaborate on these. Setbacks exist for a reason, as you all well know. They are not in the city code for purely arbitrary or capricious reasons. They are a matter of quality of life. That's why all standards exist. For various reasons, the city wrote in the zoning code that 15 feet would be the right setback for this kind of situation. Any reduction from this is by definition an impact on quality of life. If not, there would be no justification for the standard. But we know that state law requires cities to grant waivers for various standards for projects that provide affordable housing. It's part of state density bonus law, and we all know that, and the residents of Sea Air support that principle. A modest reduction in setback and a modest impact on quality of life is reasonable in order to advance a greater public good, such as affordable housing, but it's all a matter of degree. If the applicants had proposed a reduction to, say, 12 feet, we wouldn't be here tonight. Such a setback would have been acceptable to Sea Air while still allowing the project to be built. But they didn't do that. They took it as far as they possibly could, going all the way down to 5 feet. We have to ask why. I believe the central reason is that it's just too easy to lay all the impacts of any project on those who are on the lower rungs of our economic ladder. The applicants have told you that they need to open up the buildable envelope and that it's a matter of project feasibility, and also staff has said this. That's what they needed to say to overcome our appeal. They would like you to believe that any increment above 5 feet would render the project infeasible. But their written feasibility analysis that's included in your packet tonight addresses only a full 15-foot setback. Would a setback somewhere between 5 and 15 feet really render the project infeasible? We believe the answer is clearly no. Requiring them to provide a larger setback would, of course, necessitate some fairly major changes to the design, but that is not the same as infeasibility. If the city council were to tell the applicant to widen the setback, how would they do it? Well, we can't redesign the project. That's the applicant's job, but we do have some ideas, and that gets into the second problem with the standards, and that is the socioeconomic aspect. As you've already heard tonight, on the east side of the project is single-family housing, and the city standards there require also a 15-foot setback. And as you heard, the applicants did not request any reduction to the setback on that side. And again, we have to ask why not? Reducing the setback there would open up the construction envelope, as they say they need to do, but in a different way. We have no way of knowing what their decision processes were, but we can speculate. They may have felt that they would get too much opposition from those residents or from the city if they asked for a reduced setback on the east side. So perhaps they made a calculation and figured no one will notice or care if they leave the east setback intact and impose the absolute minimum setback on funky, junky old sea air. If that was their strategy, and I don't know that it was, but if it was, it almost worked. But it turned out that someone in sea air was upset enough to pay the $300 fee to file the appeal. Privacy is one of the important justifications for setbacks. Although the staff report states that the city has no ordinance protecting privacy, I was surprised to see the following statement in the landscape section of the Planning Commission report from August 20th. So this is an attachment to your packet tonight. This is a quote from that staff report. The project includes a 15-foot landscape buffer, also the 15-foot rear yard setback from the most easterly property line, so as not to impose on the privacy of the adjacent single-story residential land uses. End of quote. Now, I don't know if it was the intent to say single-story or single-family. The staff, that report said single-story, but in either case, the idea of maintaining the setback on the east side to protect the privacy of those homes while reducing the setback on the south side from 15 feet to 5 feet, and then saying it's okay because no one's privacy is protected, is a clear case of socioeconomic inequity. It implies that maybe there's an unconscious bias or a double standard. As I said before, the residents of Sea Air are among our lowest income residents. They are generally not the type to fight projects or raise a ruckus, but they are also proud people, and they are deeply offended by the idea that they will have to bear the entire burden of standards waivers to facilitate the construction of what will undoubtedly become million-dollar condos. They alone will have to bear the loss of privacy and any other impacts that come with such an extremely reduced setback. Now, the last point. Is this the best affordable housing project for this site? The project as approved by the Planning Commission, as you know, would be 11 market rate units and only one guaranteed affordable unit. So all of this business of standards, waivers, and concessions is to enable a single affordable unit. Shouldn't we be getting more than one affordable unit out of this? I believe I've heard recently, and I think Mayor Blake Spear alluded to this, that the state wants us to have more projects with densities around 20 or 30 units per acre. This site, in my opinion, is ideal for that kind of density. If not here, then where are you going to be able to do it? Let's imagine for a moment that this site is developed as a mobile home park or tiny home development. It would provide much higher density and be much more affordable for our citizens, as well as showing the state that we heard their message. If you choose to approve this project with the 5-foot setback in place, at least get more affordable units out of it. Please don't waste this site on yet another market rate condo project. Don't let this be a missed opportunity for a better kind of affordable housing. I would like to close with a quote from Deputy Mayor Hinsey, with her permission. This is from a Voice of San Diego article from January of this year. Deputy Mayor Hinsey said, when you're a leader, you have to represent, quote, when you're a leader, you have to represent the ones that aren't the loudest. You have to represent the ones that are sometimes the most stigmatized, vulnerable, quiet people, end of quote. I believe that describes the people of Sea Air pretty well. Please don't further disadvantage those who are already disadvantaged. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Don. If there are no questions, we will go to the applicant for 10 minutes, and then we will go to public speakers.
I'm gonna hopefully share screen here. So we'll work on that. that.
Mayor Blakespear, while they're looking at that, can I ask a question of Dawn real fast? Dawn, I was just wondering, you talked a little bit about that the waivers were unnecessary and also raised the feasibility paperwork that's in the staff report. Was there any additional analysis that you all had done that showed it was unnecessary or showed that the feasibility is opposite of what we found or what the city found in its analysis?
We don't have the resources to be able to do the kind of analysis that the applicants do. But as your planner indicated, there are alternatives. One would be a large central building, which might be more like an apartment or condominium building with attached units. But we have not analyzed any of that because we don't have the resources. But I think the point is that a lot of the issues that are arising here because of the applicant's decisions about the product that they wanted to build. And what we're saying, or what I'm saying, trying to say is that the right project for this site?
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Sorry, I'm struggling to get this shared. Here we go. Share screen. Now I just need to find PowerPoint presentation. There we go. Okay. Move this thing off my notes. Sorry about that. Good evening to the council people and community members. My name is Erin McKinley, and I'm here tonight to talk about the proposed Vulcan 12 density bonus project and the associated appeal that concerns the southern property line side yard setback, which is what we're here to focus on tonight. Before we jump into the appeal, we feel it's relevant to highlight some of the important characteristics of the project. Vulcan 12 is a petite enclave of 12 homes that live and look like traditional single-family style homes, even though they are sited on a property zoned for attached multifamily or apartment product. Find my next slide quickly. We didn't start at this 12-home design initially. The underlying zoning and state laws would allow for the property to be developed to an intensity of up to 20 residential units. Only one of those units would have to be an affordable unit. In order to achieve that yield and meet the setback requirements of the city's municipal code, one large monolithic several-story structure would have to be sited on the property, either with fields of parking or by creating a 3-story-like product with basement level parking. The bulk, the scale, the vibe, the energy of that type of cumbersome apartment building did not feel native to the neighborhood. So regardless of our pocketbook, we worked to design a different type of product and we reduced the yield. Our first submittal was not a 20-unit monolithic structure. It was actually a 16-unit semi-attached product with basement level garages. We followed proper protocol and we put the notice of application clearly on bright green paper in front of the property. As we worked through the submittal process, we continued to listen to feedback on other active projects in the community. Both anecdotally and through conversations, we further recognized that the best suited product for the neighborhood would be more traditional 2-story single-family style product. We wanted to embrace the single-family nature to the east of the property rather than bulkier attached products. Again, we made an active choice, not based on revenues, but based on what we felt was right for the community. So even though we were already 9 months into our design process, in July of 2019, we tore out all the pages and we started fresh. By September 2019, we had submitted our new design for the only 12 single-family style homes, one of which is an affordable unit under density bonus. That October, we held our formal neighborhood participation meeting to unveil the newly improved design and invited neighbors within a 500-foot radius using the addressing provided by the city. Then by August, we were at Planning Commission. In our introduction of the project to Planning Commission, we proactively addressed the request that had been made by Sierra neighbors in advance of that meeting. Prior to Planning Commission, a couple of Sierra neighbors echoed each other's request for a 6-foot masonry wall to be included in the plan along the shared property line in place of the fencing that was proposed. In our introductory comments at that meeting, we requested Planning Commission to condition the property to provide a 6-foot masonry wall along the southern property line to benefit our neighbors. The project received a very favorable 4-to-1 vote to approve. And even after the vote was approved, we continued to listen to commissioners. Based on the commissioner's continued comments and input, we made the additional request to further condition the property to provide enhanced articulation in the architecture along the shared property line. We didn't do that to earn the votes because we already had them, but we did it out of a desire to be a good neighbor. It has been our goal from the beginning that the design be harmonious with the neighborhood. We understand that with every design, there will be elements that people love and others they wish were different. That brings us to the appeal tonight. Again, the appeal is specific to the side yard setback along the southern property line, which is actually the same along the northern property line. We have received a lot of positive feedback regarding our proposal to not max out the site to its densest 20 unit allowable yield. And instead we focus on creating compatible homes with the neighborhood. But in order to utilize that single family style product and achieve the design, we must work within the constraints of the site. Site and code constraints dictate widths of private drives. They dictate garage depths. They dictate utility easement widths. They are fixed elements that can't be reduced. There is a litany of fixed elements that we have to respect. Additionally, key stormwater and landscape choices had to be made to ensure that the project benefited from critical and required detention basins, green spaces, and planting areas to enhance the overall aesthetic of the community and break up massing. In order to move forward with the preferred community compatible single family style homes, the neighborhood encouraged, the site was carefully planned. And after accounting for all the site and code constraints, a necessary and vital side yard setback waiver was requested for the southern property line and the northern in accordance with the state laws of density bonus. That waiver allows for the reduced side yard setback along the southern property line and the northern, which is the only item in the appeal question today. If we took this product and we attached the units as was discussed earlier, that gives us no relief to the constraints from the north to the south. And it would not affect the need for the side yard setback waiver. It would only serve to create larger, longer stretches of uninterrupted structure. Instead, we opted for a balanced green space between the units. Additionally, the garage depths, along with the drive aisles, are the main driving constraints north to south. So this is not a socioeconomic based calculation. It's simply due to the physical constraints of the site. We made the same request on the north side, on the RCP side as well. The appeal requests a 15-foot side yard setback off the shared property line, and in no uncertain terms, that is completely infeasible and would physically preclude this density bonus project from being built. Without the waiver, we are physically precluded from building the project as designed, which is the threshold that needs to be met for the waiver to be granted under state law. We understand that our sea air neighbors to the south will experience change with this project, and the process of change can be fearful for some. We believe strongly, however, that this project will bring change for the better. Currently, sea air is adjacent to an industrial commercial use with a field of asphalt parking that drives consistent traffic. Presently, an enormous industrial building sits directly on the shared property line with 0 side yard setback and stretches over 70 feet long with a flat, unarticulated surface. In addition to that structure, the massing of 2 40-foot long industrial storage containers are also directly abutting the shared property line with no setback. Our project will change that condition. Instead of industrial, there will be more compatible residential use. And in terms of traffic, the traffic letter shows that we are actually reducing estimated daily average trips by about 33% with the development of this project. Sea Air residents have collectively submitted over 40 emails appealing the waiver on the side yard setback. And we understand that a whole bunch of those were duplicates, and ultimately it was about 7 households who submitted emails. And we definitely want to provide answers to the items that were addressed in those letters. First, the safety and fire. These new homes are required to be up to current building code, which accounts for earthquake safety to a much greater degree than the aged existing industrial structures currently on site. The new homes will also be equipped with fire sprinklers and meet all fire code. This project is a benefit in terms of safety to the Sea Air property. In terms of the 2 stories and privacy, our research documented in our community character study demonstrates that the 2-story nature of the proposed homes are very typical for the area. Also typical for single family zones R8 and up are 5-yard-foot setbacks. It is typical with single family developments to have 5-foot side yard setbacks. With regards to privacy, we oriented the homes along the shared property line so that none would have any main living room windows impacting sea air. All the windows along the 2nd story of the 3 homes that share the southern property line only have windows from bedrooms and bathrooms, also very typical in single family home neighborhoods. In terms of this being an unforeseen residential use, all these homes that we are proposing fall under the existing zoning and the current density bonus laws. The use was contemplated under the very specific plan that Sierra is also within. There was also concern regarding people, pets, and gatherings. Several letters expressed concern with having people live next door, potential pets, and home gatherings. This is an example of apprehension around change. This is an allowable use. This property is not in the back country with 1 acre lots. The proposed density is very appropriate for the location, and the density of Vulcan 12 is only 14 homes to the acre, wherein Sierra is actually 29 units to the acre. Lastly, the emails commented on air and light. Only 3 homes are adjacent to the 212-foot southern property line shared with Sierra, just 3. Over a quarter, 26% of the entire shared property line is dedicated to green space, allowing for view corridors that promote the movement of air and the passage of light. It's also helpful to acknowledge, and I've included a little diagram, that the nature of our project being to the north of Sierra means that the structures are not impeding the flow of sunlight as the sun shines from the south towards the north because we're in the northern hemisphere. Not only are we improving the setback condition that currently exists on site, but we've also been accommodating to the neighbors. Even before Planning Commission, when Sierra made the request for a 6-foot masonry wall, we proactively agreed and preemptively asked Planning Commission to condition the property as such. Then, while at Planning Commission, we went above what was needed to earn the vote and requested to be conditioned to additional articulation and material changes to further enhance the visual aesthetic for Sierra. Change can feel fast to some and slow to others. We've been cultivating this project since the summer of 2018, so over 2 years now. It's taken us that long to get in front of you today with this right-sized project. This project benefits the community. The site was planned through a thoughtful study of the neighborhood with families in the community in mind. A monolithic 20-unit apartment cube could have very easily been put forth as an allowable density bonus project on this site, providing just 1 of the 20 units as an affordable unit. But that is not the project that's on the table. When 15-foot side yard setbacks are considered, they are for that type of apartment project, but that's not the project that's in front of you today. Today, we're looking at a much reduced 12, only 12 single-family style homes, and we are still providing an affordable unit. The density bonus laws allow for but we are here today regarding an appeal for just 1 waiver, the side yard setback. We truly feel that we are improving the site and the neighborhood from the current condition. It's not a greedy project. It is a thoughtful, balanced, right-sized, neighborhood-compatible, quaint enclave of 12 single-family style homes that will substantially improve the current site. We want to be good stewards of the community, and we're very proud of the project in front of council today. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope you agree with City staff's recommended action to deny the appeal and uphold Planning Commission's 4-1 approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will go to public speakers.
The only public speaker I have is Brian Ardolino, and I think he may be part of the applicant's presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so then we do not have any public speakers.
Okay, so then it comes back to the applicant, so you get 5 more minutes.
Brian, do you want to attack it?
Oh, yeah. No, I'd be happy to. Yes. Good evening, City Council members. A couple of points that were made during your questions as well as the appellant's concerns. And Aaron touched upon it as well, is actually in R15 lots that are substandard, this one happens not to be, the actual setback is 5 feet, not 15. So it's not uncommon to have a 5-foot yard setback in this zone. It's also very important to understand on a north to south basis what those physical constraints were, as we have a 5-foot yard setback, we have a 20-foot minimum garage, we have a 24-foot minimum backup space for both the opposing units, a 20-foot minimum driveway, then the minimum separation is best as we could do for the central corridor homes and accommodate the BMPs in between. And then we just kind of repeat that same set of conditions on the northern side of the property. The physical constraints are very real. Any reduction of nearly any of them, you would either end up eliminating a whole row of homes or you'd end up with a different type of product altogether. And understanding that basically as designed, all of these waivers are necessary, and we do not try and propose waivers under any condition that we need them. For example, we very well could have requested a reduction on the east side for the rear yard setback. It was not necessary. And truly only the the waivers that we needed were requested. Now, prior to the Planning Commission, some of these concerns were raised. We did bring up during the Planning Commission that we analyzed the site because we have the tools to do so. And we realized that it was possible to slightly shift each of the units a few inches forward and not completely eliminate one of those restrictions. We determined that we could probably pull off of the South PL by about 2 feet and provide a little bit more relief. And we offered this up and brought this up during the Planning Commission. And the hearing proceeded with no more further discussion. We're certainly not opposed to doing so. We'd like to be a good neighbor and provide as much relief as possible. But the 2 feet is the upper limit of what we can do before we are not satisfying either a building code, health and safety, or minimum requirements anywhere on the site. And those were the points that I heard that I wanted to bring up. I don't know, Aaron, if you want to bring up any more that you heard as well. But those were the questions that I heard. So, and we're here to answer any more questions. We're happy to be here.
Can you speak to the idea of 3 duplexes in the center instead of single-family homes, and have the common wall on the north side of the south and south side of the north?
That's an entirely feasible product, but that's not what the applicant proceeds to pursue. And per density bonus law, this is the project they would like to pursue, and these are the waivers we need to develop this project.
So per density bonus law, maybe the city attorney needs to weigh in here. Per density bonus law, the requirement to grant a waiver is based upon making a project infeasible. And so you're basically saying that it is feasible.
Not this project.
Not 12 single family homes, correct?
Correct.
And so the city attorney maybe can weigh in on the issue of waivers and the type of project. Is the developer, the property owner, entitled to nix projects that would be feasible but it doesn't meet their desires? And so I'm not sure this is the right time to get into that, as they're still making a presentation, but I wanted to hear from the applicant about this idea of the duplexes in order to get a sense of where they're at. And he made it pretty clear they're not interested in that. So maybe, finish the public hearing and then we can get into that a little bit more.
Okay.
I have a question, Madam Mayor, for the applicant, for Brian,
Yes.
If it's okay.
Yes.
Brian, thank you. Thank you for your words so far. Just thinking back to what you were saying in terms of physical constraints, and some of those physical constraints are as a result of the application of the building code and other regulations that the city of Encinitas has applied to this project. Are there things that you've found through this process where other cities may have a smaller amount of space for backup or a smaller road? Are there things that the city could have internally in the core of this project taken a different route and condensed it a bit so that would have left you specifically not needing to go south as much?
There are some aspects that are state controlled, which is building code. So that kind of limits your garages. Absolutely. That is not within the city's control. Fire safety in terms of the 20-foot width, that is actually a reduction that the city made already from 24 feet, which what it was, I believe back in 2015, the city already reduced it from 24 to 20 for homes serving 9 or less. So that's already a reduction you have made. And we're at that 20 today. The 24-foot backup is standard for the city and really everywhere, because if you're in a tight parking lot, you already know if it's striped funny, you ain't getting out of your space. And 24 feet is required there. Beyond that, if you start pulling the buildings closer than 6 feet together, which we're kind of getting close to in the central corridor, and then we're also limited by the BMPs in between, then that becomes attached product, and that automatically would put us in no longer detached, and we would be in a different category altogether. In terms of what the city can do in terms of this particular site and this particular project, we've pretty much dialed it in as tight as you can possibly make it, except for those 2 feet where we have a little bit of landscape room in front of each of the units between the unit and the drive, that we could reduce those all a little bit and still maintain our backup areas. We'd lose landscaping, but we could reduce it like a few inches on each unit in order to give the southerly neighbor 2 more feet. But those are the only constraints we're able to contend with.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Deputy Mayor Hinsey.
Questions are along the same lines there. So when we think about the central corridor between those houses that are back to back, did I hear you say there's only 6 feet between those homes?
The exact dimension, they must be 6 feet apart minimum because of life and safety as it relates to this zoning.
It's 8 feet.
It's 8 there?
That's the waiver.
Okay, so we have 8 there right now. We could, in theory, maybe squeeze a little bit more out of there before we end up eliminating the necessary separation we need for building height in the basin, because the basin is also a design constraint where we're required to provide a minimum 3-foot separation for that in that little area, plus the walls on the side, plus a little bit of extra, or we are subject to going over building height and the basins will be against the structures. So maybe you can squeeze like maybe 6 more inches out of there.
And that basin, is that for stormwater retention, or is that?
Correct.
And so there's a basin between those houses in the center part that's about, did you say about 3 feet?
It's 3 feet of planting with walls on either side.
The walls of the home.
Walls holding in the basin.
So is there also a wall that divides those houses?
It's the house, small little planting area, retaining wall, basin, retaining wall, planter area, house.
Okay, and is that retaining wall necessary because there's a difference in grade?
For the basin, to store the upper capacity of what we need for stormwater retention and allow for evapotranspiration, and also to protect the homes from the basin itself.
Okay, thank you.
And I wanted to ask about your expected sale price for these 17 to 1,800 square foot condos.
I do not have that information. I am the lowly engineer. I don't know if anyone would like to speak to that.
No, I mean, we don't have that estimation at this point. We don't have any construction estimates at this point. This project has gone through a variety of iterations, and we've taken 2 years to get to this point. If we're in this position where we're being asked to come back with an attached product, we will very likely come back with the 20 units, 19 market rate and 1 affordable. It will be a larger building. We're going to have to figure out parking and detention basins and what kind of waivers we'll need for that project. This is the most intelligent design for the community that the community character study kind of earthed for us. We're forced to do this community character study through the city of Encinitas to create a compatible project. And this is what came from that. So we really have to work within the constraints of what the city wants. And this is what we've developed in terms of getting down to the nitty gritty on pricing. I don't have that yet.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's finish up the process here, which is rebuttal by appellant, and then we can also ask more questions if we need to.
Okay, is it my turn again?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, well, this has been very enlightening to me, and I think it illustrates what I was saying earlier, that most of the design constraints or physical constraints on this project are the result of decisions made either by the applicant or by city staff to pursue a single family project rather than a multifamily project. Going to a single family project necessitates all of these yards and setbacks, which ends up with butting up against Sea Air Mobile Home Park in a way that is simply unacceptable. A different kind of project, I know that the developers, the applicants do not want to have to redesign, but I have to say it happens all the time. People have to redesign. It appears that some of their earlier designs, which they rejected for whatever reason, were in some way superior to the design that they've brought to you, because they did allow for more setbacks on the sides and potentially even more affordable housing. This is a question that I have. If they did build 20 units, would they not have to provide more than one affordable unit at that point? Because I thought it was based on a percentage. Even then, if the units are attached, then they most likely would, at least in the beginning, sell at a lower price point, so they would be more affordable. So I think it's obviously it's up to the city council whether you want a single family development there with the minimum setback on the south and the north, or do you want to try for more affordable housing and a project that would be more acceptable, at least to Sea Air, and potentially also more acceptable in terms of the amount of affordable housing that's provided. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to ask any questions of Dawn? Okay, I want to ask the city attorney the question that was posed by Councilmember Crayons. And I think the way that I conceive of that question is an issue of the difference between precluding a project and precluding a product. So if, you know, the developer wants a certain product, but that doesn't necessarily mean the project is something that can't be accommodated in a different way. So if you could just address that, city attorney.
Sure, thank you. This is Leslie Devaney, City Attorney, Honorable Mayor and Council. I heard the question. I was doing some checking in the time that we were hearing the rebuttal. Under the density bonus law, the waiver is required before you for the project that is before you, unless that project that is before you can be done in a different way. And what you've heard from the applicant is it cannot be done in a different way. Now, I understand that the question from Councilmember Krantz is, well, let's talk about another project. But the other project isn't before you right now. The applicant has gone through the Planning Commission and staff, et cetera, to bring before you what they've been asked to bring before them and to bring before you. So that's what's before you tonight. So another way to say this also is when you start to try to redo the project on the dais, it is not the project before you. And so density bonus law doesn't address something that's not before you. So you are required to do the waiver unless there's an alternative for the applicant that would allow them to build the product and the project that they have before you tonight.
Councilmember Crayons.
Yes, so obviously the developer has to be willing to cooperate in looking at other things. The funny thing is that I live next door to a duplex that just sold for $1 gazillion. And so, you know, if it's the issue of the product and what it might fetch on the open market, you know, 3 duplexes there, I think would be quite valuable. But then I heard Brian talk about the space in between those units, those center units, and he talked about 2 feet, you know, wall, and then 2 feet with a retaining wall for the detention basin, and then another wall for the detention basin and 2 feet. And so if my goal is to be sensitive to the impacts of the reduced setback to the south would mean that every inch counts, then I would hope that the developer would be willing to go back and squeeze the project in a way that would add feet, maybe a couple of feet, to the rear yard setback. And you know, the presentation by Aaron was nice, but I think I heard embrace change insinuated throughout the presentation. And I have to admit that were I a resident of Sierra, I would not be too keen on embracing change that meant a 2-story wall 5 feet from my place. So I get they're looking to move forward, but at the same time, perhaps what we can do, I would like to make a motion that we take option C, which is to request additional information from the applicant to substantiate and support arguments and continue the matter to a future hearing date. And
I'll second that, but let's hear from Erin. Has her hand up and wants to speak.
I mean, Brian had gone through what we could do and that he had already studied this because it was brought up at Planning Commission. And after studying it, he was able to find, Brian, was it 2 feet that you were able to find north to south? I think he's looking for his unmute button.
Yes, we can absolutely give 2 more feet to the South PL. And we could possibly get even to 3 if I can squeeze those center buildings down to 6 feet apart in terms of health and safety. So I don't know if I don't want to put words in your mouth, Aaron, but I don't believe the applicant would be opposed to be conditioned to move forward with moving the buildings collectively north so that we can provide an additional 2 to 3 feet as much as possible to those neighbors to the south.
Yes, and so, you know, to me, if you're talking about 5 feet setback from the buildings on the south property line, it seems to me that the area between the 6 buildings in the center should be 2 feet. I mean, excuse me, 5 feet. And you know, I don't know what the implications of that are engineering wise in terms of that detention basin, but that's area that to me would be would perhaps allow for a less impact on the sea air.
I can answer that one real quickly. Buildings need to be 6 feet apart minimum, or they're considered attached structures. So it changes a number of health and safety regulations.
So it's building to building versus building to property line is the difference between those two.
Okay, Councilmember Hensy.
I think I was along the same lines there as Councilmember Krantz. I think that it is a really well-designed project. I see what you've tried to do and I admire that. And I like that it's smaller than most of the projects that we see. I think that from where you started to where you are now reflects better the community that surrounds it. I do agree though that I have that issue with equity in that putting it right up next to the sea air when for so long they've just had a wall next to them is going to be a change that they're being asked to take, where you have, I think, 13 households along that wall versus the just 2 that are behind it on the east side that are the 2 single family homes with a lot more room. And so I'm also in favor of doing all that we can to get them a bigger buffer. And I like the direction of two more feet and to see what else we can do as well.
Okay, so just to summarize, where I think Councilmember Kranz's motion was to send this back to them to work on it, right? And try to get as many feet as you can. Wasn't that your motion?
Yeah, that was the motion. Is option C in there, and
I'll call on you in a sec. No, go ahead, Tony. I just want you to finish. I want her to know I'll call on her.
And you know, I don't know if there's a way to make a motion that you know, in some way commits the developer to, you know, increase the setback on the south side in a way that is acceptable and not come back to the city council. I frankly, you know, would prefer to have it back to see. And, you know, I don't doubt that Sierra may still have some beef with it, but at least I will feel that we did everything we could to minimize the impacts on them.
Okay, Erin, did you want to speak?
Just kind of wanted to reiterate the fact that this was brought up at Planning Commission, and so we have had the opportunity, as Brian has acknowledged, that to study it. And this is what we can provide, and we are happy to condition the property as such. We would much rather take that as a condition of the property and move forward than delay this process even longer. We've been at this for 2 years, and we have worked tirelessly using the community character study to develop the right type of project for the area. The side yard setback, being that it was 5 feet, is a pretty typical thing for single family style homes, but we are absolutely happy to stretch that as much as we can, and Brian has already studied that. So there's not something magical that we're going to be able to bring back to you the next time around. We'd love to have you condition the property to do as much as we can and provide that relief on the southern property line. That's possible without completely being unable to build this project.
What kind of timeline are we talking about in terms of being able to, I mean, you know, make the adjustments to the plans that are necessary to commit a project that increases the rear yard setback on that south side?
I know that Brian's already.
What timeline is that?
I believe Brian's already studied the 2 feet is for sure. Correct, Brian? And then the.
Correct. Yeah, the study's already been done. We know we can do 2 feet, and we feel like we can probably squeeze a few more inches out of the center and still achieve all of our other requirements. Adjusting the plans, I believe we could probably have that done in a week, 2 weeks tops, because it's a very simple design change. It was, I just wish, because we were serious about making these revisions during the Planning Commission, and they were heard and not considered, and we're here tonight. So yes, we're happy to make the revisions, and we already know what we can and can't do, and we can turn this around very quickly. That's why, as we keep iterating, I'm sorry, that we know what we can do, and that's why we want to proceed if possible with conditions.
So Brian, are you saying that you're able to get up to 3 feet that you think?
I think we can get 3 feet. I got to make sure, and Jay and I will have to put our heads together on this, because we also have to maintain our building heights in the center, and it's measured by existing or lower grade, whatever's existing or proposed grade, whichever's lower. And we need to make sure that if we're abutting the wall to the structure or get within just a few inches of it, that's going to not affect our building height calculation. We know we have probably a foot in there that I might be able to get, but it's going to be really, really tight. So it's like, I know I can get 2. I've studied that, and I know I can do that without any issues whatsoever. 3, I can try and get if I squeeze the buildings in the center together, but beyond that, we're going to start failing some building code or health and safety regulation.
Well, I believe you're already got a waiver for the height measurement, so I think that's already kind of covered. But for me, I would prefer to have it back to see how they managed to, how many feet they managed to come up with, and in what way they did that. So I'm going to stick with my motion and have them come back.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody? Does anybody feel like if they come back with 2 feet that you want to indicate if that's going to be adequate? I mean, or just see what happens.
I mean, I think this is a difficult decision, because I think that I understand the dilemma and some of the issues of the residents that live at Sierra, and I understand the arguments being made by Councilmember Kranz. But honestly, I haven't heard any evidence raised by the appellant that supports their claims. And, you know, and I think there's, you know, there's plenty of facts here that support what the Planning Commission did. And so it's very difficult for me to, and it sounds like we've asked 1,000 questions of Brian and staff, and it sounds like, you know, honestly, they've squeezed as much as they can squeeze. And so, you know, I'm inclined to, you know, if they can get 2 feet, they can get an additional 3 feet and move this setback to 8 feet. I think that that is great relief for the folks in the southern portion of this. And so I won't be supporting this motion tonight. But I would support, if the motion does pass, which it sounds like it will, I will support it coming back as soon as possible. You know, if the majority, you know, wants it to come back, and I'd be comfortable, you know, them seeing if they can get more square footage. But, you know, it sounds like it may be a waste of time, because it sounds like they've done everything they can to squeeze it out. The other thing too is that you know, you also want a nice project there too. And when I'm hearing like some of the amenities being squeezed, you're also, you know, just kind of, you know, creating a project that you know, that's going from something that really sits on the parcel really nicely to something that you know, is a little bit less. Let's take up the landscape here. Let's do this. Let's do that. The thing that I thought was interesting, and just talking to Brian about some of the places where I was really kind of looking to point out where they could squeeze us more, is areas where he can't squeeze. And so, you know, the backup, you know, I know that, you know, I remember there was a situation where on the coast where we had approved a project with less than 24-foot backup. But I understand what the code says, and also the driveways being the size that they are. But if that's all restricted, and even the moving of the units together closer means that it's an attached, and that's an entirely different project. You know, I think that they've done what they need to do. And I know that folks on the south side may not want to hear that, but I think that an additional 2 or 3 feet, you know, will I think provide a bit more relief.
Yeah, there's no question it'll be more relief, but let's recognize that the space between the center buildings is not an amenity. It's a BMP for a stormwater detention basin. And so, you know, I get that there's a little planter there so that they can have some shrubbery or whatever. But in the meantime, the question is whether that space is more important than more setback for the people to the south. And, you know, obviously when RCP develops, whenever that's going to be, there aren't any issues related to that development, because this new project will be there. But we have an existing mobile home park that has been there since the first Greek group came to Leucadia, I think. And so, you know, let's see what we can do to maximize the setback in order to make their quality of life a little bit better. And maybe you're arguing that's marginal and won't make that much difference, but I think it's worth the effort, frankly. And it's unfortunate that Brian didn't bring that with him. And it doesn't sound like the Planning Commission to me that they wouldn't try and maximize that. So I did not watch the video and get a look at that. But ultimately, I think that it's not asking that much for them to come back to the council with a project that says, okay, it's 7 feet, 11 and a half inches, or whatever the new setback is, and let's take a look at it, and then we go.
Well, it sounds like Brian's saying that they would agree, Aaron and Brian would agree to 2 additional feet now, so that would get it up to 7. And it sounds like there's a potential of additional, so that could be potentially 8 feet right now.
Well, in terms of agenda management, is this something that we could bring back in a way that was fairly routine, so that we just had the plans and we saw what it was going to be, and the public would understand, and the CR folks would know, and, you know, it's just an opportunity to put it back in front of the public? Or does it have to come back as a full, you know, public hearing for an appeal?
This is Kathy. I think you're going to have to get clarification from the city attorney, but this is still a public hearing on an appeal, so we would have to continue it to a date specific. And then because the notice has already been done, so we would continue to a date specific. There's not time to put it on the October 21st. So the next meetings are October 28th. And then in November, we just have the one meeting, which is November 18th.
I'd love to see it October 28th.
Okay, let's hear from Aaron, and then Deputy Mayor, I'm going to call on you.
Maybe Brian can word this better for me, but it's looking like if we can try and require the project to have that 3 feet. Brian, do you want to word this for me? Because I was just talking.
Oh yeah, no, it's like we do request you to try and vote tonight with the 3 foot dedication. If that is unacceptable, then we would request date certain as soon as reasonably possible. I do need a little bit of time to make the changes. So the 28th would be the closest. But if in any way, shape, or form, having already analyzed this, I know I'm not wasting my breath in saying that I'm certain that we can work with staff to ensure 3 feet minimum of an increase on that setback. But if that's not going to happen tonight, then is most reasonably possible. As soon as reasonably possible would be greatly satisfactory. It's just we need a few days to make the updates.
Okay.
We want to get that 3 feet.
Let's hear from the Deputy Mayor. This is also her district, so I want her to weigh in.
Yeah, it's really important to me that we get as much space for them as we possibly can. Is there some other way that we could move another BPM to the back side of that setback to get more green space and more, room to put between?
The challenge is the central structures are 8 feet apart, so at most we can steal 2 feet out of there. The north side, as we know, is already 5 feet, and the south side's, of course, 5. We know we can squeeze 2 feet out of the drive aisles total if we reduce some landscape areas and make the backup space as tight as possible. So building height, be darned. 4 feet is the most we run into before we hit another issue somewhere. But we'll have eliminated landscaping at that point, and we're now sacrificing quality of project. I know we have 2, 3 I think is possible. I think 4 is pushing it.
I would love to see it put their heads together with staff and just squeeze the heck out of this sucker and come back on the 28th.
Is it the preference that we get rid of all landscaping in the interior drive aisles in favor of the southern city? That what I'm hearing as a directive?
Well, I think that, from where I sit, I don't know that I want to get rid of all landscaping, but the reality is that to me, the people that live to the south are, deserve to have as much of a setback from this project as possible. So again, I think that Brian he's a computer man. He's going to put this together and bring it back, and you'll tell us what was sacrificed in order to make a larger setback for the folks to the south. And, between Jay and Roy and the rest of the team in planning, I think that I would love to see this back on the 28th.
Well, and I'll just weigh in too that one of the things that I had heard from my discussions with staff was that the units, if you went back to a 15-foot setback, you would run into some other problems. But one of them was that the units would go down to 1,000 square feet from 1,700 to 1,800 square feet. And if shaving off a few feet, but getting that setback back could accomplish that, I think I would definitely be in favor of that. So I know we're talking about landscaping, but if we were also talking about square footage, I think that would be fine too. I mean, I think Dawn made some really great points about the fact that We want to have more naturally affordable housing in the city, and smaller units are more naturally affordable. This is a really good location for us to have more naturally affordable housing. So, I just want to make sure that that's recognized. We almost never have neighbors saying we would like to have more affordable housing. And so, we should recognize that as something that is a good and to try to promote that to the extent possible. I understand that the applicant, that your interests are in the maximization of the product, the project, so that it pencils for you. And I understand that, but it's also important to us that we are, you say you don't know what you're going to end up selling these for. I'm sure that in your modeling, you have some idea. And I think that it is important to the city from a policy perspective that we are getting more naturally affordable housing.
Not maximizing the site. We could be doing the 20 units to maximize the site. This was definitely not a pocketbook decision. The pocketbook decision would have had us here with a 20 unit density bonus project with only one affordable unit, because that is the calculation that would get us there. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a question about reducing square footage, because it's the depth of the garage that is one of the refining characteristics from north to south that is creating this pinch. Is that accurate, Brian?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, we can squeeze a few, like we're literally squeezing 6 inches out of here, 6 inches out of there, 6 inches out of there, and losing landscaping all the way through the site. And really limiting the facade of the homes themselves down the drive aisles, because we're going to end up wiping out landscape pockets and things like that. But we're trying to do our best, and we're happy to attempt it. There's not much more we can do. So
okay, well, let's bring back on the 28th. If the deputy mayor seems to support that, and I'm not sure where you are, Councilmember Mosca, but I do think it's important that we try to maintain as much space with those existing neighbors as possible. And I am concerned about the equity implications of not doing that, and to have that 15-foot buffer on the other side with single family homes, but not on the side where we do have more affordable housing. I think that's problematic. So to me, that's important that you try to get as much as you can out of it. And I think hearing it on the 28th and it doesn't have to be long, because hopefully we won't have as much to go into, but we would be able to just make sure we all felt comfortable with it. Anybody else want to say anything before? I think that's Councilmember Kranz's motion and my second of his motion. So
is the intention is that this would come back on the 28th of October, and that we would try to squeeze as much as possible. Is there a feeling like they need to redesign this project, or that you want back at 15 feet? If they came back and said 3 or 4 feet, is that what I'm trying to understand?
I think, to me, Tony kind of hit on it when he said, get all the smart people in the room together with staff and fire and Brian and Aaron and see where it comes from. I think we're assuming that Brian's just doing it on the fly here and that's working, but I think it's quite possible that staff and everybody fire working together can say, okay, here's 6 inches and here's another 7.5 inches, and you can build your way up. So I don't think anybody is suggesting that they're going to redesign the project from what I'm hearing. I think they're just going to try to move things around a little bit and see what they can get. And since all of us, or many of us, have said that that's important, that boundary, that they would work toward that goal.
I did suggest redesign of the project, and it was nixed pretty quickly. So,
okay, well, that too.
But I appreciate their willingness to look at this and come back on the 28th with not redesigning their project, but squeezing it so that there's as much southern setback as possible.
Okay, so anybody else want to say any last thing before we vote? Okay, so let's go ahead and have a roll call.
And before we vote, Mayor Baxter, I'm just going to make sure I understand. So the motion is for option C, request additional information from the applicant to substantiate and support arguments and continue the hearing to a date specific of October 28, 2020.
Correct.
Okay. So Councilmember Hubbard is absent. Councilmember Mosca?
I will say yes to this motion, but it sounds like they've squeezed a lot, and so I'll reserve my opinion, but I'll say yes to the ability for them to look further and see what else they can do without sacrificing the quality of this project altogether. But yes.
Councilmember Crayons?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hinsey?
Yes.
Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously with Councilmember Hubbard absent.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron and Brian. I know that was frustrating in some ways, but I think you're close. And thank you also, Dawn, for your comments. And I just would like to point out that was a good example of the council working together to find a consensus and all of us expressing our opinions in public and working our way towards something that we could all support. So I think that was a good example of that in action. And it's now 9:21. And so I'm gonna use the chair's prerogative to push the ADU items to the next meeting when we do not have any presentations and it's relatively light, so that we have enough time and energy to devote to that. If there are any public comments who want to make their public comment because they've waited this long on the ADU ordinance or policies on ADU, then we'll absolutely hear them now.
Yeah, we did have one public speaker, and it was for item 10C, and that's Barbara Murray.
Okay.
Barbara, you can start when you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm not used to doing this Zoom thing without having my own screen, so it's weird. Okay, I do want to make a few comments, and I'll probably come back and make more comments when you hear this in full next time. But actually, thank you for not making me stay up all night. I wanted to comment particularly on item 10C because it looks like your planner Jeffrey Plageman has done a lot of work and thinking about, it's clear that you guys had to make a lot of changes in the city ordinances to meet the requirements that the state has once again altered. And so a lot of what's in 10B is kind of out of your control as far as I can ascertain from my reading of those 64 pages. I do want to express my thanks to Planner Plageman for all the work on both parts. I do want to point out, as he kind of says in his report, that incentivizing, the city has done everything they can because the state has asked them to incentivize the construction of ADUs. And while that is important, it also has a downside because adding ADUs without having any affordability requirements just adds more units. And what that means is that you have more total units, so you have more units towards your requirement of housing units, but you don't have more units towards your requirement of affordable housing units. Or as it says, every ADU unit that is built that is not affordable means more construction will have to occur to meet that affordability standard. The easier the state makes it to build ADUs, the more of them will be built, as your own statistics on permit issuances and permit requests over the last 3 years show, and as my own personal observations in my own neighborhood show very clearly, everyone wants to build an ADU, whether it's an addition to their home, an exterior addition, or alterations on the inside, or a JADU. Because most of these have little to no requirements for parking, this is also creating additional stress on the infrastructure, on the already bad parking situations that everybody knows exist in many parts of the city. So again, this is a side effect. We understand that that's not something the city can do anything about. The state says this is how you have to do it. What I do like about this supplemental report is a couple of really strong suggestions that I would like to see followed up on, and perhaps you can talk to these points next time you take this up at the next meeting. Encouraging the upgrading of unpermitted structures. We know that there are tons of those all over the older parts of Cardiff and Leucadia especially. And there was a plan to try and get homeowners to come forward and get those permitted to add to the existing, you could count those numbers as part of the existing housing stock, and some of them hopefully as affordable. However, that was not really followed up on. People were afraid they were going to be penalized. So I really like that. And I also like the ideas that are in there about encouraging, providing some supplemental funding to people to encourage them to make their ADUs affordable. Don't just build an ADU so you can afford to pay your mortgage. And I'll have more to say on this next time, but I'm very encouraged to see somebody's thinking really hard about that and putting it in front of you guys as a future agenda to make ADUs do more.
Well, thank you, Barbara.
I'd like to ask Barbara a question.
Okay.
Sure.
Do you have an ADU? Is there?
No, I do not. I have a single family residence on 2 lots, which we consolidated so that no one could ever build twin homes on them. That's what I have. However, directly behind me is a project which contains 4 twin homes, a single family residence, and each one of those units contains an ADU.
I see.
And there's
Okay.
ADUs building. I live in Cardiff.
Let's talk about this when we're having the ADU discussion, which.
But yeah, I would like to just encourage the council to look closely at that item and maybe think about that 10C report and have your own thoughts about it when you come back together to talk about it next time.
Okay, we will do that. We're on it. I think it's great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, so you got to sprinkle those ideas so that we could think about them in advance. That's great.
Exactly. Think of me as the ADU fairy.
Okay, so
thank you for not staying up all night.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Barbara. We'll see you next week. Okay, so with that, we are bumping 10B and 10C forward a week. We do not have any informational items or council member initiated items or council member reports. So let's go to the city manager report, or if there is one.
No report, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. City attorney report.
Not tonight. Just briefly, I sent everybody an agency alert on the Brown Act that the mayor had identified last time as AB 992. And I could just put over and kind of describe it generally for the public as well so they understand it. Maybe next time, unless you want me to just do that tonight.
Just do it. Yeah, just tell us.
Okay, so California Assembly Bill 992 went into law about a month ago, September 18th of 2020. And basically, it indicates that legislative bodies may use social media in the following way: to answer questions, public's questions. They can still do that. They can provide the public with information, and they can solicit information from the public regarding matters that is within the legislative body's jurisdiction. But what members cannot do, they cannot communicate with each other on social media regarding matters within the legislative body's jurisdiction. So how this plays out in social media is you can't exchange private messages that involve one another, making or directing posts to one another, sharing posts or comments or communicating with one another, commenting on each other's post, engaging in comments on a third party's post where there's 2 council members. That's a real change in the law because usually they say 2 council members can talk about anything. This says on social media, even 2 cannot talk about something on other people's posts or among each other, or liking one another's posts or comments, or using digital icons that express reactions, emojis, etc. So in short, members of the legislative bodies may use social media as a vehicle to collaborate with the public, but may not use it to communicate with members of the same legislative body on matters that are within the jurisdiction. So that's quite a change in the Social Media Brown Act principles. And so for members of the public that are trying to engage with council members on something that's before them, if you don't see a lot of council members liking or sending emojis or weighing in, that's why. It's not because they don't want to engage, it's because there's a new law in this regard. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, it's basically extending the practices that we already have to explicitly cover social media, right? So like if you're not going to post on social media, I'm against that density bonus project that's coming up on our city council next week, right? You don't post that and then have another council member comment on it. Right, I'm opposed to it too. Like you would, that's exactly the same thing that you would never do in person or over email. But if you're, I mean, in general, liking a news article about how bicycling is really taken off during the pandemic, I mean, that's a generalized subject matter that we deal with, like bicycling, but that would be the kind of thing I would think that would not be problematic.
Right, that would not. But to your first comment, where this changes really dramatically is 2 council members can talk about, in general, anything they like, as long as it doesn't involve a third, right? In social media now, the new law says 2 can't talk about something. So that's quite a change on social media. But you're right, if it's something very general about, wow, get a load of the bicycles during the pandemic, how awful is this? That's a general topic. But if you start talking about, oh, the bicycle lanes on Vulcan or whatever are really going to be problematic, then you're starting getting to more specificity, which is within the jurisdiction of the city. So this is a real big change in the law relative to 2 council members not engaging versus a majority. So that's the difference that I think really needs to be pointed out.
Okay. And in a way, for policy reasons, that makes sense because the 3rd council member could be watching those too. So could get, right. So that's why that would make sense that you wouldn't be doing that.
Probably, yeah. All right, but that concludes that. And I also have a public, if anybody wants it, I sent it to the council. It's certainly a public document because there's no confidential information in it, which is an agency alert if anybody has any questions. So I can make that available to anybody that would like it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
City clerk report?
Yeah, just quickly, mail ballots have gone out. So if people are concerned because they have not received their ballot, they should contact the registrar of voters. If you go to sdvote.com, there's a ton of information on there. You can click on Where's My Ballot, which is a really good resource. I've done it myself. You sign up for Where's My Ballot. It will tell you, I turned mine in, I got an alert like 2 days later, your ballot has been received. I will get another alert when my ballot has been counted. So that's a really good resource for everyone I want to bring to your attention. We do have 4 mail drop-off locations in the city of Encinitas. So it's both the Cardiff Library, the Encinitas Library, Encinitas Chamber of Commerce, and Magdalena Ecke YMCA. I just want to remind everyone that we do not accept ballots here at City Hall. We've had a number of people try to drop their ballots here. So those are the 4 mail drop-off locations for Encinitas. And again, if you haven't received your ballot, contact the registrar of voters and they will get that sorted out for you.
Can I ask you a clarifying question, Kathy?
Absolutely.
Those drop-off locations are actually not the U.S. mail, are they? They are direct pickup by the registrar of voters.
Correct. So they are at those locations. They are managed by the registrar of voters, by employees of the registrar of voters. They go in, they manage and operate those, and then they physically have a process of where they lock them down and they physically bring them to the registrar of voters office.
And I think it's also the case that all of those sites are not open on the weekends, which is
you have to check the website. Most of them, I don't think the libraries are open, but the registrar of voters is open and they are accepting ballots continually.
Right, but I mean, if you want to drive down to the registrar of voters, that's different. But if you want to do it in Encinitas, I'm pretty sure that the chamber is closed on the weekends. I know both libraries are closed, and then the other one is the YMCA. And
right. Yeah, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There are other locations, and if you go again to SD Vote, they have all the locations of all the ballot drop-off locations throughout the county, and it also gives times.
Yeah.
And there will be, as you get closer, there'll be extended hours.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I voted this morning and went to the library at 10 at Cardiff Library. And by the we were about 10 minutes early. And by the time it got to be 10, there was a line of 6 people who were waiting to, and the entirety of the experience is that you put it into the box. Which is kind of fun because it maintains the ceremonial part of voting where you go somewhere, there's a line and there are a lot of official people and flags and you're filling out your ballot. So you're not filling out the ballot part, but you are actually putting it in the box. So I was glad that I did that. And you're also, of course, saving the Postal Service the money and or the state the money who's paying the Postal Service. But it seemed very secure.
I dropped mine off at the Encinitas Library on Wednesday, and I got there right when it opened. And by the time I dropped mine off, there was about 20 people in line. So
Wow.
They have said that there has been a huge number of ballots already returned, larger than in prior years.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you. And do you have do you want to make any update on the census? I think that's, if you haven't filled it out yet, do it in the next day.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah, that's really important. And I'm not completely up to date on that, but I know that some deadlines, they were talking about extending it, and I don't believe they are. So if you haven't filled it out, you can make sure you do it. You can actually do it online. It's a very simple process.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to say anything about that topic?
I did want to say something, but not about that. I did want to go back to AB 1234 for a really brief report.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Just really briefly, I did want to note that I attended on your behalf the League of California Cities annual conference this past week. And it was, different than it has been in the past since it was remote. And we had a really bunch of really interesting workshops, everything from climate change to how COVID's going to impact CalPERS employees, leadership in these uncertain times, racial equity issues, advancing racial equity. And so they were really, really neat topics that I'll bring up in the future and perhaps even have some items for you guys to consider in the future. We did have one item that I voted on in the annual General Assembly, and that's an amendment to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, essentially amends the code to say that it limits the immunity for social media platforms that are doing nothing in terms of criminal activity that's being facilitated by social media platforms. So this kind of really conditions the civil immunity that they have. And so hopefully that means that they'll go after or limit the facilitation of some of these criminal activities. But I'd be happy to speak more about this at any time that anybody has any questions about what happened at the League of California Cities annual conference.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to make any AB 1234 reports? Hey, you're muted.
Yeah. We had a special meeting at NCTD to talk about the 5 big moves and had key folks, including Hassan Krata, the executive director there. And it was a very informative presentation and conversation. And I think that the questions that we sent in writing to Sandag were answered in such a way that I feel comfortable the coastal corridor for the railroad is not going to be abandoned in favor of an attempt to put a rail corridor in the I-5 right of way. So for me, that was important because I didn't think it was ever going to happen that move would get made, and that by shifting the focus, we might miss out on opportunities to address quality of life issues in the current coastal rail corridor. So I think we're headed in the right direction with this, the 5 big moves, and the next iterations will be really important. And I look forward to getting some of the environmental analysis that will tell us how the plan is going to impact the greenhouse gas emissions and other very important issues related to climate change. So Mayor Blakespear may have more information about what that process is going to look like and how long it's going to be. But from where NCTD was, Sandag made some important clarifications, so we're feeling a lot better.
Great to hear. Yeah. Deputy Mayor, you want to say anything?
Sure. I'll just add a couple details about the census. So we did think that we had until October 31st because that was the circuit court ruling that they were going to extend it till October 31st. But then the Supreme Court, it did in fact will end it tomorrow. So in Encinitas, we had a higher rate than we had in the past. So in Encinitas, our response rate is getting up to 74%. And in 2010, we were at 70%, and the California rate is 69.1. So in Encinitas, we have a pretty high turnout this year, and Pat Piat has done a lot to get the word out and make sure that we're working our contacts to make sure community advocates here are getting the word out about that. So yeah, that's pretty good news. Not that it's ending early, but that we have a higher response rate than in the past.
It's hard for me to really understand what that means, because if we're only counting 74% of the people, that means we're missing out on, I mean, a full quarter of the money that comes from the federal government. Yeah. So that seems like it's still problematic, and we should be really pushing everybody to fill it out in the next day.
Well, but it you know, you never get 100%.
Yeah. Sorry.
And we're going to be actually higher than we have in the previous census. So while it does seem kind of crazy that we're only 3/4 of the way there, you know, it isn't going to be it doesn't seem to me a big hit on the resources that we currently get.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then my report is today I testified on your behalf, all of you in the city, against oil and gas drilling at a subcommittee that Congressman Levin had invited me to speak to. And that was very interesting. The first time I've testified in front of a congressional committee. And all of us from coastal communities, there was from South Carolina and Florida, and everybody agrees that it would not be good for our local ecology or our local economy to have offshore drilling. So we know that that's banned in the first 3 miles because of our governor did that, but then the federal waters are on the other side of that. So we're hopeful that the Senate will take up the bill that the House has passed, and that potentially a president would sign it, and that we would not have that kind of thing here in California. So
I would like to ask for clarification. I think that you were speaking in terms that you didn't coordinate with all of us to make sure that we agreed with what you were going to testify to. You just
I did not, but the city staff did help me prepare my remarks,
and that's good and fine. But I don't want anybody to think that we had any kind of off the record arrangement.
No. Well, and actually the reason I said on your behalf is because Joe had said that and it sounded so elegant. He said, I appeared on your behalf at the League of California Cities. And I thought, I appeared on your behalf as a representative of the city of Encinitas. And
I think it's safe to assume that nobody on the city council wants oil drilling or natural gas goes to California. So you don't need to talk to us. I think you can assume that.
Right. Yes, I know. I have yet to talk to a person. Congressman Levin said he has done hundreds of these town halls, and he's asked people at each of them if anybody supports having that. And one person raised his hand at one point, and it turned out he had heard the question wrong. And that was why that person answered that way. So, yeah. Okay, well, good. Well, I think we are done, and we are going to adjourn this meeting. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Adjourned.